Welcome to the Dog or Pass podcast. Don't adjust your screens. This is not Asian Michael Imperioli and steroided up Steve Sharippa. I am Dan Tom, your new host, and this is Mad Lab Mike, your co-host. We're going to be here to break down every fight card for the UFC from top to bottom like you're used to. So don't get anywhere. What's up, Mike? Are you ready to get into this week?
Yeah, man, I'm excited to do this with you. Your card is a little, lackadaisical. We're transparent here, so we'll be honest. Not a great lineup, but we got fights, and having fights is better than having no fights. So I'm ready to go.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll be ready to go. We got some stats, some takes, all the rest for you guys. As you know, we're coming off UFC 315, which was a really fun card, a really fun show. You know, it was fully loaded. We had four of us, but the torch has been passed. We're ready to rock on here, and in full disclosure and whatnot. Me and Mike were talking before the show. We're not going to be forcing anything. We're going to keep everything fun, organic. But we also want to keep you guys involved. So obviously, Cody's thing was the PRP, and that was really fun to look forward to from the end of the analysis. We also want to give you guys some kind of fun show consensus that you guys can follow along, track, give us crap for, whatever it is. But, if you guys want to help, be a part of that conversation, let us know, whether you want a consensus favorite, a consensus dog, you want to see us, each of us, take a long shot prop, and then we parlay it together for some fun odds. Maybe Mike likes some guy by decision, I like somebody by submission, and we have some fun that way. Either way, fun is the key word and not forcing it. But as far as that goes, we do want to recap just a very little bit, touch on a couple of the big results, but we're not going to, drown you guys too much, especially right now with the recap. There'll be plenty of time to relevantly touch back, as we know the themes repeat week to week in this game. But then we're going to go right in and break down this card, UFC Vegas 106, from top to bottom. Mike, what did you think of last week really quick? Anything you want to touch on before, we get onto this week's card? But we had a big pay-per-view last week, a title change hands. One was defended. Any thoughts off the top of your head as far as last week goes?
Yeah, I thought Canada got a great card. I mean, from top to bottom, I thought that was a great card. Obviously, whenever you have some of these pay-per-view cards where it kind of lacks a little bit of name value, it seems like sometimes you hope a little bit more than what it's going to be. But this card, we didn't have really high hopes. We were looking at it, we're like, oh, Valentina's fighting. It's a decent card from top to bottom, but nothing great. Nothing where we're like waiting for weeks for this card. But it delivered, man. It was a lot of action. You know what I mean? We did really well all the way up until the main event. We ended up in the bonus, which was good. So I got a little streak going right now from DraftKings and from a wagering perspective. But it would have been a monster night if Belal would have won. And he kind of stood true to what he said, right? He kind of stood true to what he said. He said he was going to, try to box him up. And I didn't believe him. I mean, he did go to the wrestling, wasn't that successful, but I think he was telegraphing it so much that at which point, is it readable? And I think that, JDM looked great takedown defense. Obviously, we both said 25 minutes on the feet. If you're going to decide to do that with someone like JDM, you're going to get boxed up. And he did. So took a tumble there. But the Valentina fight, I just felt like that was a gift. Every once in a while, the Vegas gods give us a gift. And if you're going to give me one of the greatest to ever do it at plus money, thank you very much. We walk away with a profit.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I don't think we led the folks too wrong. I know the main event, I believe we had consensus Belal picks, but I don't think we were like insanely bullish on it, which can seem like a cop out. But in hindsight, this is kind of why we have those opinions, right? Because, even though we were picking Belal, I don't believe any of us were telling you guys to, rush to the betting window right now, unload your account. We were more excited about the Shevchenko opportunity, to your point. And, I want to correct a tweet I did because it's going to be relevant to a lot of the female matchups we broke up. But I worded a tweet wrong, and I said skill over size. The truth is both are important. I think the correct tweet and the correct wording to frame that fight is styles and context, right? I think that's the thing with most fights. We get caught up in this narrative or that narrative when all the pieces actually matter. There's no sense splitting hairs. It's how we contextualize that. And if you contextualize it the way we did, I feel like that fight, did you well. But there were favorites we picked like Jose Aldo as well as Belal, but we weren't too bullish on that because, we kind of knew something could happen, and that did there. So hopefully we didn't lead you too wrong. And not to dwell on spilt milk, but do you have an opinion on that Aldo as a hobby scorecard, by the way?
I mean, listen, too many times people scream robbery. I mean,
Yeah.
even in the Bukowskis fight, people were screaming robbery, and I was like, come on, let's stop with this now. Like, a robbery is completely different than what it's laid out to be right now. Um, Listen, it could have went out either way for me. Could have went either way for me. I thought Aldo might have squeaked it out. You know what I mean? But I have no problems with Zahabi winning that fight. Zero.
Yeah, well said, and that's actually going to be relevant for a fight we're going to be talking about. That was, we had a fighter coming off what some people consider robbery of the year fighting this weekend, and I went to back and watch it. And to your point, a lot of the times when you go back and watch it with sober eyes, right? You don't have money on the line, you're not caught up in the emotions. Maybe you turn down the commentary, which also helps understand the scoring criteria, etc. And you see these fights are actually much more justifiable and closer than you might realize. So we're going to talk about that too. But I think it was a really good card overall. It sounds like we both had some nice results. I know I came up just short officially, but unofficially I did really well. So I have no complaints here. And hopefully we can get you guys, to steer clear of some traps and maybe score a couple more dogs. I know it's the name of this show, but that was our biggest hit, albeit a slight dog last week. We're going to try to get you more of those, and maybe less Sopranos references or dated 90s references that you guys will come to know me. That will slip from time to time, but this is not a 90s reference podcast. No, this is a breakdown podcast. So we're going to be breaking down the card of the week, which is UFC Fight Night, I believe 256 to be technical, but of course UFC Vegas 106, also known as, UFC Fight Night Burns versus Morales. Of course, we've got Gilbert Durino Burns, or as I like to say, because I just got to put my own weird little twang on it. And Gilbert Burns is such an awesome dude, but he is facing another awesome dude in Michael Morales, and the odds are heavily tilted. I'm going to give those to you while I set it up before I bounce it to Mike here. Of course, we got Gilbert Burns is the underdog at plus 570. Michael Morales, of course, your favorite, minus 820. The odds makers did open it a little tighter. That's a public money push there. Over is set at 3.5 for this fight, folks. Over is going to be at minus 110 for your price. If you want the under, right at minus 125. So almost, close to pick'em prices for your totals market. Mike, do you have any initial impressions off this fight? You want to get the ball rolling here?
I think this is ridiculous. I think these odds are absolutely ludicrous. I got to be honest with you. I don't care what side of the gate you're on with this. These odds are insane. So if you were to even think about wagering this fight, I wouldn't tie Michael Morales into anything. I wouldn't tie him into a parlay. I wouldn't take him. Obviously, I wouldn't take him straight. There's no value there. All the value is on Burns. Whether you think Morales is going to run through him or not, at the end of the day, there's an old saying, this is why they fight the fight. When you look at Gilbert Burns and you look at his losses, I get it. Like, you got to remember there's certain calibers of people looking at these things. Some people just go on, they want to play week for week, and they look at just the number and they say, wow, he lost 3 straight. He's almost 40 years old. He's on the down tick. This guy's washed and done, and we got this new shiny new toy coming in Michael Morales that's undefeated in the UFC. Kid looks great, but you got to look at the resume, and you got to look at who he's lost to. I mean, he lost to Brady. He lost to JDM, which, believe it or not, before he got finished, it was actually a pretty good fight. He lost to Bilal Muhammad, obviously former champion as of this week. He's losing to really good top-level guys. And then when you go over to Michael Morales, you see, okay, he beat Magny, washed. He beat Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews is actually almost not the same style, but kind of a prototype of Michael Morales, where these guys are uber talented, but you just don't know how much of a gear he's going to give you. So he beats Matthews. He beats Griffin, a decent, decent fight. Fugget and Giles. So he doesn't have this big extravagant resume where you're like, oh my God, he's like, this guy's clinical on these guys. He's just running through people. You got to show me. I always say that you have to show me first. The one thing I will say about him, he's very athletic. What he does really well from a striking perspective is he dances very well and throws very well off his back foot. But you need a certain type of a dance partner to give you that. You need someone that's giving you kind of a medium pressure. He's not all the way in, he's not all the way out, but he's kind of hovering in the mid-range. Gilbert Burns doesn't hover in the mid-range. Gilbert Burns is the type of guy who's going to just keep coming forward. He's going to keep hunting you. Whether he's going to hunt you to land that big shot because he's a former really good wrestler, high pedigree grappler that fell in love with the home run shot with his striking, or he's looking to actually take you down and try to utilize your grappling. As you get older, you don't want to take the damage. So you tend to lean back on the thing that got you to the dance. And the thing that got him to dance was not take a lot of damage, take you down and try to grapple with you. but power is also the last thing to go. So kind of this guy's attributes are kind of still hovering around. The problem I do have with Gilbert Burns now is he is a little shot worn. He has taken some damage. His, I wouldn't say he's completely chinny. There's a big difference between being chinny and chinny to me is if you get knocked down and you can't get up. If you get knocked down and you get up and you have the wherewithal to kind of get your legs back, because your legs are really what goes on you, you're not really chinny. You know what I mean? So is his chin going a little bit? Is he showing a little mercs in his armor and stuff? Yeah, but he still has his power. Maybe he doesn't have his explosion, but he's got good wrestling. He's got really good grappling. We all know that. So where does Morales beat him? Morales is going to have to get on his bike for 25 minutes and sharpshoot him. And can he do that? Absolutely. But the one thing about Morales, he's never shown me like that desperation. He's never shown me that ability to like fight within the chaos, but kind of control it. He kind of needs what you're giving him. He takes what you're giving him, and he kind of he'll fight with that. And he's been able to get away with it versus these guys because obviously he's the better athlete. He's younger, he's sharper, he's more explosive, he's fresher. There is a world where in 25 minutes, Gilbert Burns finds his spot. There is a world where if this goes 3 rounds and this thing gets a little bit dicey and gets, you're starting to say, well, we're going to see what this kid has now. He faced a little bit of adversity here. There's going to be something to be said about that 4th and 5th round to see what he has, how deep he can dig in that basement, because we know Burns can do it. So although I am picking Morales here, I just think he's younger. He's got the 8-inch reach advantage. He's going to be able to stay on his bike a little bit. He's going to be sharper, faster. There is a world that I'm cautious and nervous about this fight. There's, it kind of aligns to be like that fight where somebody's always got to go, and it's like maybe it's this kid's time to go. So I am picking Morales in this spot, but I have zero confidence in this spot. This fight does scare me for him.
So I liked all your analysis there, but the 2 words that I really zoomed in on that you said, Mike, was show me. And I think that's something for all of us to remember, because there are things that are show me spots. In fact, there's another spot that I would call a show me spot, and the price isn't, it's actually closer to a pick 'em price. So price doesn't necessarily dictate what a show me spot is, right? Again, back to what I said off the top of the show. It's not just one thing. All the pieces matter, a little wire reference there, but it's more about contextualizing these things correctly, right? And this is more of a show me spot. And it's, as a gambler, because we have a lot of gamblers watching this, right? Obviously. So you want to keep that word in your mind frame, because it's real easy in this game to have FOMO. The line's moving. I want action on this. And don't get me wrong, if you're like a degenerate, likes to throw like a couple bucks on every fight, like I'm not shaming you. That's all fun. Welcome to the family. You're in the right place. That being said, you don't want to get too carried away, whether you're having fun or a more serious gambler, with some FOMO spots, like I'm going to miss out. And sometimes it's better just to sit back and just be like, you know what, this is more of a show me spot. And that way, even if you are right, you maybe feel less bad about it. Like, oh, I left some money on the table. I should have played that. This one, it makes it a little easier, right? Because we are kind of priced out, so to speak, at these -8 to 1 or north of 8 to 1 odds now that we're seeing Morales. But I too am picking Morales. Now, usually, like I said last week, I haven't been able to cite this. People always make fun of me because if there's an old Brazilian dog out there at tall plus money, like chances are Dan Thomas is sniffing around that betting window. And I haven't been falling for the usual traps. And I did fall for a trap last week, which I'll touch on as it gets relevant here to the potential plays on this fight. But yeah, I think we're priced out of the Morales side. Even though I don't blame anybody for dog or passing it for a Burns, I don't really like it either. And I'm a big fan of Gilbert Burns. I also, full disclosure, work for Home of Fight, and I've done I used to write the recaps for him and Renato Moicano, their podcast. So I'd sit in and watch it live with them, and those guys are just such great personalities and characters. So I got to fight like my personal bias of like really like enjoying this guy Dorino, right? But when I look at it from an analysis perspective, I look at my notes, Mike. The common culprits, and again, for those of you guys are going to get more familiar with me and Mike, our work and whatnot. But I obviously do fighter profiles over at MMA Junkie, and as well as contender series grades and some prospects, which are all relevant because they're going to come up with the fighters we're talking about later in the card, as well as this matchup here. But when I look at my fighter profile, my notes, because I'll go back and do it myself, so you guys can Google like Dan Tom X Fighter X breakdown, and you maybe can get a little cheat sheet in my notes. And one of the things I noted on there is that Gilbert Burns' common culprits are checking jabs and counter crosses. Now, the desperation you were talking about, I agree as far as that changing gears that Morales lacks. But what he really lacks to me that really bothers me, Mike, and I don't know if you have this opinion as well, but he's too much of an opportunist and too little of process, you know, especially guys like us. We like to kind of do the forensics and to figure out, try to predict what's going to happen next. We got to follow that trail. And with opportunistic guys, there's not really a solid string to follow, you know, like you mentioned the Fugit fights or these fights where maybe there was a bit of a later finish. The finish kind of just materialized, or sometimes they didn't in some of those fights, even if he came close, like the Max Griffin fight. And that can be hard to depend on a guy, right? Like, where's the process? What's going to happen? But the shots that he does do good, well, are jabs in all forms, as well as that counter cross. And, you know, you look at granted, a lot of them were southpaw jabs, whether the Khamzat Chimaev or Kamaru Usman, who dropped Gilbert Burns with the jabs. But man, whether they're dropping Gilbert or not, those jabs are a problem. And even though I'm not like a super, into the stats, we're like, oh, a guy's got a big reach advantage, that automatically means he's going to win. Like, no, 6 inches or above is significant, folks. And Michael Morales also has that, and I can't look around that. He also has this athleticism. When I wrote about Michael Morales and my grading the winners, I'll write about fighters coming off. So they're not breakdowns; they're more like recaps of performances. But I'll give little like notes and tidbits. And one of the notes I wrote about Michael Morales, which reminds me of like a young Kevin Holland and a young John Jones. I know that's a lofty and a weird comparison even to make at this point, but you look at his like last fight and he's doing like spinning elbows off the cage, right? And so he's validating my looks, but by the same time, that spinning elbow, folks, that came after being controlled needlessly, in my opinion, for 2 minutes against Magny, right? And let's look at the worst case scenarios. What if Michael Morales does get taken down, right? Well, the 2 times he has been taken down or found himself on bottom was against Adam Fugit and Trevin Giles. And both those are at least, one's a brown belt in Fugit and another's a black belt in Giles, granted. But I did not like his ground instincts, Mike. I didn't like the urgency. Again, back to that lack of desperation we talked about. It followed him to the floor. And here's how he got up. It wasn't referee stand-ups, but he waited for opportunistic times to kind of bridge and explode. So he waited for a submission attempt, a pass, which is all fine and dandy, right? But again, it's not something you want to rely on. Like, that explosion is going to be there once, twice, maybe even 3 times for the athlete Morales is. But what if Burns is able to get him down? It could be bad news. That being said, I don't think Burns is going to be able to get him down too easily. Michael Morales does come from a freestyle wrestling background, national champion. Granted, it was in Ecuador. I don't know how stiff that scene is for competition, but he's got accolades in Muay Thai and freestyle wrestling, real strong in the clinch. And I hate to say it, but I hope we see more process, Mike. I hope he shows us, like you said. But even without that process, I do think his opportunism and his athleticism is enough here. And as far as plays go, like, you're getting Michael Morales by knockout -175. His money line's way out there. I think if you're going to play Morales, you want to look at the under 3.5. If you can get that for -120 or under, closer to even money, I don't think that's a terrible bet. But you just have to make that bet knowing that there's really false equity in the Gilbert Burns finish there. Not that he can't, but I feel like you're essentially buying a Michael Morales line. So you might want to keep this is a fight where whether you bet that under or not, maybe keep an eye on the live line for Gilbert Burns. A lot to throw at, but what do you think about the totals or my analysis on that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, as far as this is probably going to be a clear stay away from me, but if I were to bet this fight, like I said, Morales is a guy that you're going to hear me talk a lot, guys, about tying punches together. You hear me about, chain, like almost like chain wrestling and boxing. It's tying punches together. Like Morales doesn't tie punches together until he sees that you're there to be had. He doesn't take those kind of chances, so that makes me believe that this possibly might go over, because you're going to have someone in Burns who's going to kind of stay out of that mid-range. He's going to be all the way out, or he's going to be all the way in. Because he's got very good leg kicks. Gilbert Burns got very underrated leg kicks. So he's going to try to stay all the way out or all the way in. He's going to try to stay out of that mid-range. So they could do some jock lobbying on the fence and stuff like that. But if I were to play this, which I'm probably going to stay with, I haven't decided yet, but I'd probably lean towards the over, and then I maybe would take like a small tasty flyer on Burns inside the distance by submission or something. But outside of that, to me, you got to show me. You got to. I'm expecting him. I'm picking him to win, but you got to show me that you could take it out of a gear.
Yeah. And last thing on that, I would like the over more. The only reason is because I hate unders. So last week, just real quick, we had the Korean fighter versus Willie Cat Santos, right? And what did I say, Mike? I said, you know, I'm always worried about betting the Korean fighters at favorite prices because they should win, and then all of a sudden they go, "Hey, time to brawl," and you go, "What? Time to what?" And there goes your bet, right? And I should have took again. We did give you good advice last week. If only I listened to it, right, Mike? Because I saw Willie Cat on the scale, looking bad on the scale, realizing he was going up in weight, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fade him. I'm gonna take a shot on the Korean fella and Jong Young Lee, right? And what I did to kind of hedge that, because it was all violence, and you see a guy bad on the scale, you're like, this guy's do or die anyways, and he's bad on the scale. Like, there's no way this thing's gonna go over. Let me, kind of hedge that with a bit of the under. And Mike, I don't know if you have certain trends that you're like, I'm really good at this, but I'm really bad at this. I tell you, Mike, I'll tell you, folks, I'll be honest with you, no lie. I am the worst at unders, man. I cannot hit an under to save my life. It's probably why I hate unders and I love overs, but I also just hate unders because they never hit for me. So even if I'm saying, the under makes sense, if you like this angle, I would still be very hesitant in playing that. And I would be hesitant in playing anything in this fight. So I just wanted to add that before we push on.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we do have the co-main event though, and always interesting choices for these co-main events. We've got Rodolpho Bellato minus 550 versus Paul Craig. Nothing can outrun a Grease Scotsman. Sorry for you, Willie Simpsons fans there. Plus 400 for the not janitor Paul Craig. Of course, total for any Paul Craig fight is usually a 1.5, as is the case here. You got the over 1.5 rounds plus 105. And the under, well, at 1.5 minus 135. Yeah, I don't disagree with the totals, but as far as the money line goes, is this another one that's overinflated, or do they actually swinging toward the right direction here as far as the odds go, Mike?
I think it's overinflated a little bit. Listen, at the end of the day, when guys are fighting, like I said, anything can happen in a fight. You watch boxing, you watch MMA, you just know after years and years and years and years of watching it and being involved in it and practicing it, anything can happen. Guys come in and they have, fights with their wives, or they have problems at home, or they got, depression issues. You just don't know what's going on outside the cage or the ring. But our optics show, well, this is a fighter A's fighting a fighter B. This is a clear win. We're going to line this at minus 500. So yeah, I understand why it's lined that way. But anytime I see a minus 500, minus 600, I think it's ridiculous. So is there value on Bellato? No. But should he be the clear favorite? Absolutely. When you look at Paul Craig, this is a guy who is basically opportunistic in everything that he does. He doesn't create anything. He's not a creator. He's more of an opportunistic guy. You have to make that mistake. And if you make that mistake, he's well-versed on the ground enough to make you pay for it. And he's done it time and time and time. He did it to Ankalaev. He does it time and time again to people. But if you don't make that mistake and you can keep this fight on the feet and you can lay hands on him, he's extremely chinny. He's very easily had. He fights very erect. His chin is on the shelf. He does not pull his punches back. He kind of throws them. He don't kind of yank his hands back. He kind of just leaves them out there, drops his hands. He has no problem, jumping guard with nobody there. He'll just do a ghost guard. He'll just lay on his back and he'll wait for you to, come to him. You start chopping his legs until the ref tells him to stand up. He's kind of falling into that category. Then you add on top, he's coming up to 205 here. And Bellato's a natural 205er. Bellato's a big dude. He's got some big power. He's got decent wrestling. He's not afraid to get on the ground and grapple with him, even though I don't think there's any reason to do so. You keep this on the feet, you lay hands on him, you knock this guy out. Paul Craig's striking has gotten a little bit better, but I think it got a little bit more surprisingly better because we're so used to seeing him being so bad. If he does something actually decent on the feet, we're like, oh my God, he actually got better. But his striking's putrid. I mean, he's got like really pedestrian striking. So if you just kind of walk through that, there's certain strikers that, yeah, they might have some decent power, but their guards are so low. They have no defensive attributes. You could kind of just walk through them, eat one to land, eat two to land one. It's not like Craig is this big power hitter. I think Bellato is going to kind of just walk right through him. He's going to kind of get what he wants, providing he doesn't make that mistake and get caught up in Paul Craig's cobwebs. I think he finishes this fight inside the distance.
I like that, Paul Craig's cobwebs. Thank goodness they don't let this guy fight with a kilt on. I mean, could you imagine how much scarier that guard would be just from a visual perspective?
Yeah. He's got a nasty guard, man. He's got a nasty guard.
He does, and submissions in these divisions from middleweight or up, which Paul Craig, of course, back up at 205, which is a great point because Bellato. I agree with you, but not to nitpick on words, but I would say maybe he's a natural heavyweight, not a light heavyweight. I mean, this
that's
guy's
what he is.
huge.
Big 205er, yeah.
He's big. Yeah, he's big to your point. And more importantly, though, he does have skill, though. He's not just a headhunter. He goes to the body and legs, which is good. And this is also going to be, I believe, at least his second camp with Alex Poatan Pereira, who he works with both stateside and in Brazil. I don't know. Alex is always traveling around. Like, they even were able to link up in Brazil for a bit for this camp. And, it's not always about who people are training with or the camp they are, right? It's ultimately about the fighter. They have to go in there. They're training with this guy. It's like, are they training with this guy or are they this guy's punching bag? Like, we've seen that. We've seen both of those. That being said, you look at the difference from Bellato when he first got in the UFC, and even just after that one full camp with the Teixeira and MMA crew, he's already like jabbing and like doing Poatan impressions, jabbing to the body, calf kicking, working the body. And I think that's going to be really good against a guy like Craig. Now, an interesting trend for Bellato is he just seems to get his stuff just wrecked in round one. Like he'll end up in like a mount against Jimmy Crute, or he'll get like rocked early, by like Porteria or something like stupid, right? Now, as we saw, with the Bo Nickel fight, and I know hindsight being said, although some of us were warning you about it, as far as where that striking level was really still at for Bo Nickel when he fought Renier de Ridder. Not to do too much MMA math there, but yeah, Paul Craig. Part of and I'm a big Paul Craig fan. Part of the reason why I was so bullish on Renier was because I'm like, listen, I know he struck 3 rounds with Paul Craig, but Paul Craig, I like him, but he's not a good striker, and I think that's only aged worse in hindsight since the Bo Nickel loss, right? Not to do too much MMA math there. And again, not to do too much MMA math, but even if it does end up a worst case scenario, I do think Bellato can survive because, again, Jimmy Crute had him in worst case scenario for like 4 minutes and like knocked him down at the end of the round, and Bellato still came back, not to win that fight, to earn a draw, but he came back to clearly win those 2 rounds. So he is a guy that will fight for your money, even if he does get into that early storm. But I don't know if Paul Craig can put him in that early storm. And even if he does, Jimmy Crute, of course, was able to submit Paul Craig and wasn't able to submit Bellato for whatever that's worth. Bellato, I believe, is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt for what that's worth. I know they come in all different shapes and sizes as far as BJJ black belt levels, but he's got that experience there. He's got some good positional play and ground and pound when he's on top. So I really think he can finish that fight. Unfortunately, the odds makers really think he can finish the fight, and you were pretty much priced out. I mean, they opened it at 4-1 money line, north of 5-1 now. His inside the distance line is approaching 3-1, may even close to that, and you're only getting $1 cheaper for his knockout prop, which is like around -180. So I feel like you're priced out here. Maybe if you want to get cheeky and throw some kind of plus money sprinkle that isn't on Paul Craig, you go Bellato round 2 because he does have bad round 1s. Maybe he doesn't get the finish in round 1, but even round 2 is only like plus 275, maybe 3-1. I don't see a lot of meat on this bone, Mike.
Yeah, no, I don't see much here. Like I said, guys, you got to remember, I try to say this to my subscribers, in my Discord. We have fights every week, right? Like, it's not like the NFL where you have X amount of weeks to play, or you have, we have seasons. We have a full year to play. You don't have to push. Like, you don't have to push. You don't, just because, like, listen, it's frustrating for guys like me and guys like Dan Time and these guys that do this every week, week in, week out, hours and hours and hours and hours. We're ripping film, we're doing this, and then at the end we're like, motherfucker, there's nothing to play. But you got to discipline yourself. You don't have to push bets all the time just because you feel like you have to have juice on it. That's how you become a losing better. So you pick and choose your spots. It's okay if one week you have, like last week, I had a pretty decent bet pack between boxing and MMA. It was pretty hard. It was a lot to absorb. Then some weeks maybe I'll have 2 or 3, and some of the subs will complain, and I'll be like, well, you know what? I'm not going to push this. I'm playing with your money because I'm giving you the advice, and I'm not going to push anything. So you don't need to push bets just to push bets. And this is a situation where, sure, can I maybe take a sprinkle on the over 1.5 to see what happens? Yeah, but chances are I'm not going to because I don't feel too good about it.
Yep. And by the way, before I push on to the next fight, I will say, unlike the last one, this is maybe a little more playable in fantasy. I know they're going to be asking a lot for Bellato. Obviously, you're going to be making a sacrifice to your roster for that. But, he does have the upside, whereas, you're probably going to have a similar high price tag, I'm guessing, for Morales. But to to Mike's point, you know, he doesn't have that urgency for the takedowns to score those points. He's not stringing his punches together to, you know, skyrocket you in the significant strikes department. So we'll try to make sure we touch up on those. I'm sure a lot of you guys are fantasy players, but again, let us know at Dan Tom MMA, at Mad Lab MMA. So, you know, hit us up on the artist formerly known as Twitter there, or on the social platforms. Let us know what you guys like to see more, but let's get to more. We got MAIRON Santos -129 with the comeback on SODIQ YUSUFf +109. Total set at 2.5, of course, with the over -240. Under 2.5, +181. Before I bounce this one to you, Mike, I want to say this was a fight that I was teasing again. As far as, you know, I might tease stuff. You're like, what is he talking about? This guy, is he talking a little fast? I will round the corner. I will get back on the trail. And that's where we are for this fight. When I was talking about controversial fights, when we were mentioning, you know, the Zahabi and Aldo. And, you know, again, excellent caution that Mike was giving for those, which we all should. Like, before we start trotting out the robbery word, you know, let's trot out the other R word, relax first, because this one was, you know, we all complain, bad beats, and I definitely have a definite fair share. But this was one of the better beats I had, because I had MAIRON Santos in a parlay piece, which was stupid dangerous. I was asking for trouble, and I didn't think it was going to go his way. I was with everybody, even though I wasn't like religiously watching the fight. And even if I was, it would have been through biased eyes, because I bet it. Yeah, I'll be honest. I thought Francis Marshall was going to win that. It goes on. People think this is the robbery of the year. And I don't know what you thought, Mike, live, or I went back to watch to tape this one. And I was like, you know, MAIRON Santos was winning the majority of round one, gets dropped at the end of round one. So obviously goes to Francis Marshall. And I can see a world that's actually not too hard to see, where MAIRON Santos, he actually landed the more significant, and I thought better quality strikes in rounds 2 and 3. And although there was some grappling, which is the argument for the Francis Marshall side, and even though I do feel like the judges and Gen Pop can overcorrect with the damage word, it's actually impact that's in the criteria, folks. I did take and pass the judging and referee courses for what it's worth. And yeah, you actually look at it, there wasn't much positional passes. There wasn't much damage. There wasn't much hay made on the Francis Marshall side. So I actually don't think it was that big of a robbery. So you could say that, you know, maybe you're getting a discounted price on MAIRON Santos. However, I'm of the opinion that, you know, this line is just begging you to play the dog, right? Because SODIQ YUSUFf is clearly the more proven product here. Do have some bias. You know, MAIRON Santos does train out of my backyard gym of Extreme Couture, and he's one of my guy, Eric Nixick's guys. Eric Nixick, obviously one of the main trainers there. He won't be in the corner of all the Extreme Couture guys. I'll give you guys the skinny on who is and who is not. But I will say it's such a big roster to work with there that as much love as Eric gets, and he deserves, absolutely, you can't paint with a broad brush and assume everybody that trains with at Extreme Couture is getting the special attention, right? I can tell you that MAIRON Santos is one of those guys. But I'm curious to hear what you got on this fight, Mike, and what you think of these odds, more importantly.
Yeah, you know, the odds to me are a little confusing, just for the mere fact that I'm with you and I'm not with you with the robbery. Do I think it was a robbery? Listen, I've seen horrible robberies. Like, I mean, robberies where literally I was like, I mean, just get the guy on the podium now and say he fixed the fight, you know. And this is mostly in boxing, not so much in MMA.
Sure.
But it was a terrible decision. You know, that was a terrible. It was because I had MAIRON Santos as well, you know, and I literally was sitting on the couch. I was in my Discord, and before they read the decision, like, I took my phone, I threw it, I went to the refrigerator. I'm like, God damn motherfucker, I can never. And then when they read MAIRON Santos, I was like, bro, we got away with one. Like, we got away with one. I honestly, there was no way that I was in my Discord and I was saying, yeah, the whole Discord scored it for him, for Marshall, you know. And I actually felt bad picking against him because he's a Pellegrino guy and stuff like that. But I really thought that Santos was going to put a workshop on him, and I was not impressed. I got to be honest with you. I was not impressed with him. It feels like he had like a safety halfway through his trigger. Like he wasn't completely committing to anything. You know, he was kind of there. I think he was a little bit afraid of Marshall's forward pressure with the takedowns and stuff like that. He was trying to kind of stab at him like a fly swatter, trying to keep him away. And he had some good spots, but it was never, I was always sitting there and I was like, come on, like, step on the gas, like, show me something, step on the gas. and he just didn't do it, and he didn't do it. And the one thing I did notice with this fight that scares me a little bit, I don't know if you guys remember this from the Contender Series, but SODIQ YUSUFF versus Mike Davis was the best Contender Series fight I've ever seen. If you guys are into boxing and you guys are like into that striking, you want to talk about clean, pure, beautiful boxing in the Apex Center where there's no crowd. You could actually hear the punches, and you can actually hear them in the corner. Mike Davis said this guy hits like a ton of bricks. His corner's like, yeah, I know, but you got to get out in there and fight. And they went 3 rounds, and it was beautiful to watch. I mean, that's a perfect phrase, beautiful violence. So SODIQ YUSUFF, the guy has it in him. The guy has that violent streak in him, and it's very hit or miss with him. Like sometimes he comes out and he looks like he did in the Contender Series, and then sometimes he comes out and you're like, all right, well, where is that guy? He's young. It's not like he's an older guy. He's been around for a bit, but he's not that old. And when you watch him in like the Barboza fight, even though he lost that fight, he's got a way about him where he doesn't care. He really trusts his chin and he trusts his skill set, because you're not hunting Edwin Barboza down. Nobody is. Like when you're putting that forward pressure on Edson Barboza, nonstop, win or lose, like that tells me something. He did this kind of to say, even though the Lopes fight ended quick, he wasn't afraid to put the forward pressure on. Marion Santos is a guy who, just, to me, it feels like he's going to fall behind in the exchanges in this fight. Like he's going to look good. He's going to look pretty on the outside. He's going to be doing some nice things. We'll try to keep him at bay, use his jab as rangefinders, and keep SODIQ YUSUFF guessing. But I think when they come together and they start to exchange, you're going to see a clear difference in violent exchanges from YUSUFF to Marion Santos. It's almost going to be like he has an extra gear that Santos doesn't have, and I think that can ultimately be the final equation in this fight. I just think that for optics is going to show you that YUSUFF is hitting with a little bit more gas, and Santos is kind of laying back on his punches a little bit. And I think for me, the way I broke that down, if you're giving me that at plus money when Santos really hasn't fought anybody, and you really think about it, maybe he shouldn't even be in this fight. If he lost that fight, if the right decision was made, maybe that's Marshall in this fight now, and it's not Marion Santos. So, I think this is a good spot for YUSUFF, a get right spot for YUSUFF. I think if there's ever a winnable fight for him, this is a really good matchup for him. So if you're giving me plus money on SODIQ, give it to him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with I think what we're going to ultimately agree as far as a dog or pass, regardless of the side you're on. I think that's what, this line is spelling out for us. There are things I do want to bring up, though. Oh, by the way, I was with you. I'm a big Kurt Pellegrino fan, and I hated picking against him for that reason. But credit to Francis Marshall, right? Because he did look a lot better in that fight. It was another camp change for the positive, which I hate to say as well. That's feels like it's dissing Kurt, but he went to a bigger camp and American top team. And Francis Marshall is a good fighter, so I don't want that to get lost in it. But you were right. He after that, it was a crazy southpaw, just caught him caught him perfectly, right, and dropped him. But you're right.
Terrible technique.
After that shot, you're right. But after that shot, he was Santos was what you're right. Even if there is a contrarian argument or whatever you want to make, there's no doubt he was gun shy. So you got to wonder, what if, maybe SODIQ doesn't have to put him out or anything, but what if he lands one of his patent counter right hands that SODIQ tends to land as well? Is that enough to maybe put Santos off of his game? And now, even at the very best, you've got to pick him, you've got to pick him kind of scenario. Either way, I would rather have the plus money from a betting perspective. So let me just say, even with my biases, regardless of a pick, my pick or your pick, folks, I think this is pretty much a dog or pass. You've got the more proven product here. And something else I want to add to this, and we don't often forget, Dana White had some big announcements. I was just shout out to my guy Carlos Gamera, my PT guy at Extreme. He was asking me what I thought of him. And I'm kind of a curmudgeon, folks, but and I've got some strong opinions as far as the UFC matchmaking trends. But ultimately, whether we like it or what we don't, the explanation is the same thing, right? It's the UFC schedule. And I know a lot of people have gotten annoyed at people like myself or Luke Thomas, more known for he's been saying this forever. Credit to him. But listen, I get it. I love having fights every weekend, especially as hardcore gamblers, you fantasy players. It's great. I get that argument, but you also have to understand that there's no biological free lunch in life. Everything comes with a price. And the price you're going to pay for UFC fights every weekend, and the brand putting more into the brand than the actual fighters, is we've got, as a writer, I've been writing about the sport for about a decade now. The words I use the most since the pandemic, folks, is rematch and impromptu. Those are my most used words, because that is pretty much 90% of the slop, right, that's getting pushed our way. And what is not realized, and that's a lot of these fights, you got to look, you got to go to the fighters' Instagrams, you got to go to Google and see when the fights were announced. But like we said, a lot of these fighters aren't getting their full 8-week camps like before. That's a rarity these days, folks, even for title fights, even for big events, or the last big events that they seem to do, the UFC, the summer shows, they're not even booking those with the 8 weeks respect out for champions, right? So these fighters in the fight night cards certainly aren't getting that. And this fight, folks, you'll notice it's not at 145 pounds. It's at 155 pounds. Usually SODIQ and MAIRON Santos fight at 145. This is at 155 because it was booked within a month's time. Now, a lot of these fighters are getting ready. They're asking for fights, right? Like, hey, we're all trying to pay our bills out here. Like, I get it. And hopefully these fighters are keeping themselves in shape to take these fights properly as professionals. But as bettors, we have to, if we're fans, it's like maybe you don't care about it as much, even though, I would think you would want, whatever fighter you're rooting for to have a full camp. But as bettors, you got to pay attention to this, because it adds another, an intangible X factor that you're going to have to bake into your handicapping. And I believe that the fight going up to 155 actually would probably serve SODIQ better. I'm not saying MAIRON Santos isn't big for a featherweight. He is a good sized featherweight, and I'm sure he has a tough time cutting that weight, just like SODIQ does, right? But SODIQ even said himself, he's had trouble for making the weight for a minute. He's a really dense guy. He might not be like huge on the reach or height equation, but he is dense, folks. And that's something that stats don't really make up for. And he's already saying that, man, I think I'm going to be making a permanent move anyways. You look at his age, he's a little further. He's not old, but he's a little further along in the career. It actually would make sense for him to go up. I actually think this fight at being 55 also is a checkbox in the favor of the underdog side. So I don't know if, Mike, you had an opinion on as far as that. Does that kind of make you like your underdog lean a little more? Or?
Yeah. I just, like I said, is the power going to translate up? Sure, it's going to. It's not like it's that big of a jump, and those guys are really not known to be super power punchers anyway. But SODIQ packs a good punch, man. And like I said, the thing I do fear about this fight was I was going to say about MAIRON Santos is what happens sometimes, right? Look what happened with Francis Marshall. He goes out, he has one showing, then he comes back and he looks like this is the guy that we thought we were supposed to see.
Yes.
So now what happens if MAIRON Santos comes back now after a lackadaisical performance, wasn't pulling the trigger, and he goes back into his, he starts doing his X's and O's, and he says, all right, well, and now we see the MAIRON Santos we were expecting. So that's something you guys always got to be careful of. When you get these prospects that come in that you have these high hopes for, and all of a sudden they don't show out, you got to be careful that second one, because they're either going to show out or they're going to maybe get a little worse because they're in their head. He admitted he lost that fight. I didn't like that. I don't like that. He came out on interviews. He's like, after further review, I feel like I lost that fight. That could be playing in his head a little bit, too. You don't know. These are young kids, so I don't know what to expect from him. I do think he's got a ton of talent, but there's a difference between having talent and knowing how to hone it in and use it. So I think YUSUFF coming up, YUSUFF's technique, YUSUFF's ability to bait you into a fight, and he's going to bait this kid into a fight. The optics of him coming forward, putting MAIRON Santos on the back, it all just checks a box of give me the dog.
Yeah, I also agree this one's going to go over. I don't disagree with anybody taking a shot on the dog here. However, I will say, if you like MAIRON Santos, or if you're picking MAIRON Santos, I suggest you treat it as a show me spot. If you are bullish about Santos, maybe don't be bullish with your wallet on this one. This definitely seems like more of a spot for a dog from the betting perspective, and that's not saying you shouldn't pick Santos, or that I might not even pick Santos, but there will probably be some bias aside in there, so I'm probably going to stay away personally.
There's a reason you come to the Dogger Pass podcast for your UFC picks, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan has been fighting for the people just like you and I. They have over 100 offices and more than 1,000 lawyers nationwide. When hiring Morgan & Morgan, it's like hiring an army that's got your back. If you're injured by the negligence of another, you deserve to be paid. When you hire the wrong law firm, you might be beat before you start. All law firms are not the same. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/doggerpass or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. That's forthepeople.com/doggerpass or pound law, pound 529 from your cell. This is a paid advertisement.
Next fight is pretty interesting, I feel. NURSULTON RUZIBOEV -282. DUSTIN STOLTZFUS +242 on the comeback as the underdog. Totals for this one, another 2.5 with the over +200 because they think it's going under at 2.5 at -275. Any thoughts on this one, Mike?
Yeah, you know, this fight's interesting, right? Because you see a guy in RUZIBOEV, he's 6'5", and then you see Stoltzfus, he's 6 foot. There's only a 1 inch reach disparity there. So, you know, people are going to look at that right away. They're going to see the height. They're like, oh my God, he's got so much of a longer reach. The one thing I will say about this, when you know, with striking is, you may only have a 1 inch reach or a 2 inch reach, but if you are 6'5" and you got a good 6 inch height, you're throwing down. So the real estate that you're covering is far less than somebody that's throwing up. So even though it says by the numbers it's 1 inch, it's more than 1 inch, especially if you know how to use it. There's guys out there that have no idea how to use their range. And there's guys out there that don't have the greatest range, but really know how to maximize it. So, you know, the one thing with Dustin Stoltzfus is I feel like even in his losses, like he's just a fun fighter to watch. You know, he's going to go out there. You know, he's going to, you know, grind. He's gonna try to get in your hips. He's gonna try to take it down. He's gonna try to make it dirty. He's fun. Like, you know, he's not just gonna come out there and skirt around the cage and dance around. The thing is, he's gonna need to do that against someone like RUZIBOEV, because even though RUZIBOEV hasn't really uberly impressed me all that much, the one thing that he does really, really well is he knows how to use his range. And he knows how to kind of take that step back and throw off his back foot. He's got a really good, clean right jab. He knows how to time it when you're coming in. And when you're coming in, it's almost like a warning notice. It's almost like, here, this is a warning shot. You're going to come in, you're going to eat this. The problem with RUZIBOEV is that he doesn't throw enough. He relies on that jab, and he doesn't tie really nothing in behind it. Jabs are meant to set you up. Jabs are meant to range find. Jabs are meant to keep you at distance. Like, they're meant for something. They're not meant to cause all this damage. It's meant to either keep you honest, find your range so you could dictate the terms of which range you're fighting at, and setting up other shots. And he just sets up, and that's it. Like, there's kind of like a roadblock after that. Like, very rarely does he come back with with something over the top or tie something to the body together. So he really just relies on that so much. The problem with Dustin Stoltzfus is when he crashes the pocket, he leaves his chin exposed, and it's just there to be taken. And I just keep going back to that. As much as I want to say that Dustin Stoltzfus, like, he's going to fight for your money, and he's going to be in the fight, and if he makes us dirty and gets in close, he can make something happen, and he can. But the fact of the matter is when he does crash the pocket, he's a complete liability. And I think if RUZIBOEV is patient and he times him and he starts reading his patterns, I think RUZIBOEV probably ends up catching him with something. So I do like RUZIBOEV. Not a hard lean. I'm not sitting here saying that like this is a lock or anything, but just the way they match up, that's the way kind of I see it going down.
Yeah, I think my analysis is similar, except I would probably be even less higher on RUZIBOEV, I guess, just because I really haven't been a big believer on this guy. Let's just say, he feels like a much more limited version of Michael Morales, and he's still athletic, but a different type of, like, Morales is like you can tell he's just really strong and sturdy, right? You can tell he's really built. He's got good balance as well, right? A good sense of himself. Whereas RUZIBOEV, he's like more of the spazzy athlete, Mike, where he's kind of flopping around. You go with these guys like they're like white belts in jiu-jitsu. He's got more of that white belt mentality in the sense where he's just like kind of spazzing, but not in a good way, because he doesn't have any good get-ups. Like, if you look at his get-ups and stuff, like the Joaquin Buckley fight and the times he's been taken down, like, the fighters are kind of just letting him up, and Joaquin Buckley, even though I did pick him to win and pick him because I thought he was going to mix in takedowns, he probably should have got a stoppage from the ground and pound. Thanks, Keith Peterson. That really costed me that night. A couple of his non-stoppages there. But Buckley is not like a black belt level submission fighter. He's not like a Khabib, a ground and pound guy or anything like that. So he's not the most comfortable down there, and he let him up, and he still won the fight. But it's like, what happens if he gets in there with a guy that doesn't let him up? And, we talk about things to factor in outside the fight, like timing of the booking, we talk about these intangibles. Another, you know, a more tangible intangible, if you will, is the smaller cage of the apex. I always factor this heavily into my booking, like especially when looking at striker versus grappler style matchups, because of the kind of action the smaller cage encourages. Of course, you got roughly about 35 to 40% less real estate than your regulation size octagon folks in the apex. And by common sense, it encourages more action, right? Some people suspect that's why the WEC was so awesome. WEC was so awesome because it was like a lot of lighter weight classes at a prime Jose Aldo and for Uriah Faber. That's besides the point. The smaller cage makes for fun action, and it encourages a specific type of action. It encourages more clenches. It encourages more scrambles, right? More opportunities on paper. Doesn't mean it's a huge edge. Doesn't mean bet every grappler who fights in the small. No. But if you do like a submission grappler, you do want them to fight in that apex, right? Some fighters just tend to do better there. And STOLTZFUS could very well have those opportunities. But the problem, like you said, is he is wide open. He is a dog that will fight for your money. The problem is he's too vulnerable of a dog. He's not durable enough as a dog, in my opinion. And RUZIBOEV, he has that thing where you're like, you know, when Stefan Struve fought, like, oh, Stefan Struve just had a jab. If any long fighter, right? Because, you know, only recently fighters have been using their jabs, it seems like in MMA. But forever we've been wanting long guys to fight long. And here comes RUZIBOEV. And it's almost like RUZIBOEV, like, oh, I'm going to take that advice, but I am going to have nothing else to offer.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy
vacant,
because
right?
That's my biggest thing when I watch, like, even guys like Adrian Yanez and stuff, who's got really slick boxing. Like, some of these guys just don't fully like get the maximum. You're supposed to catch the guys at the end of your punches. And I get it. There's short shots and stuff like that, but you're supposed to be able to gauge it. And Adrian Yanez does it really well, but he's not really a range fighter. He's a guy that's kind of in the pocket. He's got that Aldo style where he's looking for body shots and stuff. But when you got guys like Stefan Struve and stuff, and God blesses you with these attributes, like, learn how to use them. You know, so when I saw RUZIBOEV fight, I was like, man, this guy really works behind his jab really well. He kind of opens up, you know, he takes himself off the center line when he does it. And I was like, all right, what's next? Like, what's next?
Yeah. And say what you will about him facing cans, but the fact that he has that many fights, you want to see improvements, right? And sometimes, you know, he did get with a good camp as well. Like I was talking about a reason why I liked RDR the other week. I'm like, you know, if I were to pick a camp for RDR, it would be Killcliff FC. And then I go to his Instagram, like, oh, he's training at Killcliff. That's perfect. You know, that's a perfect camp for him, right? And, you know, you want someone with some wrestling and some jiu-jitsu camp for RUZIBOEV. Well, where does he go train? He goes to Philly, Marquez MMA with Joe Pyfer, Sean Brady. Great camp. Looks like he went, you know, he stays back in Uzbekistan, and then he comes up stateside for the camp. Same with STOLTZFUS, who's out in Germany, and then he comes down here in Las Vegas, cross-trade and syndicate Extreme Couture. So there's been a lot actually in my backyard of Extreme Couture. And in STOLTZFUS defenses, he actually is showing improvements. Like, yeah, his chin is still there, but his striking is much better. He's actually feinting. He's much more smoother in transition. He can kick off his punches better. Like, he is showing fight-to-fight improvements, whereas RUZIBOEV, we really haven't seen those improvements. And he was in the Marquez MMA camp before the Buckley fight. So, you know, you can be like, well, maybe he wasn't there for like over a year, so maybe he didn't get the full upgrades. Then he goes against Eric McConico in his last fight. We don't really get to see much there because McConico is kind of just scared off from the outside, took that fight, I'm guessing, on short notice. And then he gets iced right in the beginning of round 2. So we really still don't know with RUZIBOEV. So this is a really tough fight. I want to clearly pick a dog with my style, with the analysis and the reasonings I'm giving. But I may still end up picking RUZIBOEV. That being said, if I do pick RUZIBOEV, here's how I play this fight. I don't like RUZIBOEV at all. I mean, let's see what the KO prop is. If you really like it, I'm sure it's pretty chalky. But I don't know if I would have enough balls to both pick or play Dustin STOLTZFUS pre-flop. But I do a lot of round robins, and maybe if I'm struggling for a round robin leg, that STOLTZFUS money line, if, you know, sitting, you know, anywhere, especially if it gets closer to 3-1 out of principle, maybe I throw it in a round robin pre-flop. But here's what I suggest you do. If you are a madman like myself and love looking for dog opportunities, don't invest too heavily on someone like STOLTZFUS pre-flop, because you can just go out there and get iced. Look at the live betting market. Look to live bet this fight toward the end of round 1 if he's able to survive that first round. You're not going to get as good of a line, but you want to hope that he gets rocked or something. He's able to survive, maybe get on top. He still lost the round clearly, but maybe you still get like a plus 150 or a plus 190 on STOLTZFUS. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or maybe even higher if he is a really bad round, but he survived. Then you take your little flyer on STOLTZFUS. I think that's the way to approach this one. Otherwise, this feels kind of like you're getting priced out again, right, Mike?
Yeah. Like I said, sometimes you just want to because you see the path. Like I always say, when you pick your dogs, you got to look for a path, and you got to look for a realistic path. I mean, we could all sit here and say, well, what happens if a striker subs them, or all of a sudden this one comes down, he knocks him out? Yeah, all that can happen. That's great, but they're not realistic paths. STOLTZFUS has a realistic path to win this fight. Smaller cage. He's got to get inside. Can't stay in that mid range. Can't stay outside. He's got to just push a hard pace for 15 minutes. Not make a mistake. Not put his chin on his shelf. You know what I mean? And just that's the way he's got to fight. So if he doesn't get clipped and he does all those things and the stars aligned where he doesn't walk onto a shot or stand on a landmine, he could absolutely win this fight in a grinding 29-28. Maybe split decision. You know what I mean? But that is a path. So I wouldn't hate you if someone's like, I want to take a dog shot on him. I wouldn't hate you at all. I think he's too much of a defensive liability for me to trust. So that's why I'm going RUZIBOEV.
Yep. Yeah, I don't blame you. I'll probably end up picking RUZIBOEV officially. Not to be no balls nation over here, but yeah, not to sound like a fence rider, but I will definitely be looking for a STOLTZFUS opportunity. And don't be surprised if you see STOLTZFUS like in one of my legs for my round robin
Dude, if this is 1-1 going into round 3, live bet on STOLTZFUS.
I mean, you could argue if it goes into round 2, something went wrong for RUZIBOEV. If you're a RUZIBOEV fan, you could argue something has gone wrong. Like that means they've been grappling.
Super boring, and he's just peppering them from the out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's that. But you think even somebody who likes STOLTZFUS's chances, if that fight's happening, it's hard not to see STOLTZFUS getting knocked out.
Yeah.
Now another fighter who can be prone to the knockout, but I always also like as an underdog. We got Julian EROSA. He's now plus 150 against the favorite, MELQUIZAEL COSTA minus 175. 2.5 totals for this. Over plus 110 because they think it's going under 2.5 is currently minus 150. Mike, any opinions on this one? Is this at 45 or is this also up? No, this one is at 45. Again, you don't know if they're going to book the 45 or is it 55 because a lot of these are on shorter notice, but this one is at 45. Mike, what do you got?
I mean, this smells inside the distance all over. Anyway, any which way you tie it up or pick, but the thing with me is with Julian EROSA is I got such a love-hate relationship with this guy because this guy can come out and he can look like a world beater. He looked phenomenal. His head movement, good striking. He can be a little bit too cute in there for somebody who has a susceptibility to be knocked out, but he's got the tools. Like he really does. He's got the tools. He's got good power. He's a dog when when his chin holds up. He's got very serviceable grappling. Like he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a good fighter, but sometimes he just doesn't show up, or sometimes he comes in with a blueprint that is like drawn up by a blind architect. You know what I mean? So it's like every one of his fights is premised on who are we going to see? Are we going to see Jekyll or are we going to see Hyde? So when I break these down, I can't do it that way, though. I can't sit there and say, well, if we get the bad Julian EROSA, then this is what's going to happen. I got to go by the Julian EROSA that he's capable of being. And the Julian EROSA that he's capable of being when he's locked in beats Costa. I like Costa. I think Costa's a sneaky fighter. And when I say sneaky, it's because I think he's much more opportunistic than Julian EROSA, where Julian EROSA makes things happen. Julian EROSA will step into the fire. He'll let his hands go, do or die. This guy's going to let his hands go. He's going to try to create his experience. He's going to try to create his window and his win, where Costa's waiting for you to really open up the window for him. He's really waiting for you to open the door so he could jump through. He's not as much as of a creator as EROSA. Dangerous for EROSA because now you got to create someone who's opening the door that can open the door the wrong way and Costa can jump in. But give me the guy who is, I think he's got a little bit more power on the feet. I think he's a better striker. I think he's got better head movement. I think he's a little less hittable than Costa. On the ground, I think Costa's more slick than him on the ground, but I think EROSA's fine there. I think he's very serviceable. He's very aware of his surroundings, very aware of where his limbs are most of the time. It's the chin. It's the chin. You got to worry about EROSA. But if EROSA's chin holds up in this fight, I think he's be the one with the bigger moments because he's going to try to create the bigger moments. Costa's bigger moments are going to be on the moments that EROSA tries to create that he fails on. But give me the guy that's actually trying to create the moments, and I think that's Julian EROSA. So I like the dog in this fight.
Man, I was hoping it wasn't just my bias speaking, but again, I'll add to and bring my own, of course. But I really like your analysis there, Mike. Of course, I speak of bias because Julian EROSA is another Extreme Couture guy. He won't be working. I don't think Eric Nixon will be in his corner. He might be, you never know. But he is mainly Eddie Baracco's guy, another one of the mainstay coaches there at Extreme Couture, and he's also working with my striking coach. My guy Abijah Kaleo Mehula, who was on my prospects article. I do prospect yearly articles for Junkie, and they all age fairly well. And it's like, oh well, how easy is it to write one of those, Dan? You just pick up whatever hype person that everybody's talking about, and you put an undefeated fighter on there. However, my guy Kaleo, similar to another fighter we're about to talk about making his UFC debut, he was actually 4-2. When I put him on a prospects list. Who gets on a prospects list at 4-2, Mike, right? But again, it's not about numbers. It's about what you're actually seeing. It's contextualizing the skill sets. Like I said, it's not all about stats. Stats are important. Size is definitely important. Skills definitely important. But it's contextualizing all of that, right? And he's working with some really good people. He's got my striking coach who's a switch stance striker who actually can mimic MELQUIZAEL COSTA style very well. They've had an excellent camp going into this one for whatever that's worth. But to be critical, though, however, I didn't like Julian EROSA's last performance, even though he won. He cashed for me against Elkins. Mike, I don't know what you think, but like it feels like I'm trying to think of what fight it was for this last card, but literally like the last 5 cards in a row, I feel like there's been one fight where like, you know, Joaquin Phoenix from Gladiator goes and like stabs somebody before they go out there and they go out all slow motion, right? Like what is going on here? And I feel like that happened to Julian EROSA and Darren Elkins. I know Darren Elkins is perpetually slow motion, but even Julian EROSA looked like to be in slow motion.
You know what? Not to cut you off, but
go ahead,
you know,
please.
The one thing about that fight is I know exactly what you're saying. I was like, you know, he just looks like he's stuck in the mud, right? He looks like he's stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
But when you know, because like I said, you're on the mats all the time. But even for me, like when I would go against some of these guys that were kind of slower, like you kind of get stuck in the mud with them. Yeah, you know, you kind of get stuck in the mud with them a little bit. You know what I mean? So like Elkins has that way of dragging you into the big bowl of shit, and you get stuck there, and now you're in cement. Like he has that ability to do that because let's face it, he's a horrible. Like he's not an athletic guy, Elkins. He's like athletic minus. But he has some of these close fights because he brings you down to his level. So that's why I don't fault him. If it was somebody else, if he was like fighting like an athlete, I was like, bro, this guy looks slow as fucking molasses. But he was fighting Darren Elkins, so I kind of give him a pass on that.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And another point to add to that is Julian EROSA, to be fair as well, when we isolate his style, and you touched on it a bit as well, is like he's a guy that kind of gets better as the fight goes on. Like he either gets, unless it's like Julio Arce with a sweet head kick in round 3, all his knockout losses are pretty much in round 1. You know, you either knock Julian EROSA out early or he builds steam on you. And even my striking coach was going, he's like, oh man, going with Julian taught me so much, like, because he's kind of a building type too. And he's like, oh, it really messed me up because I'm used to taking that, you know, first round to be a little slower and stuff. But I realized like that's when I needed to press Julian. And I was like, no, that makes sense. That's historically how he gets it done. And if you look at Costa's more of a guy, he's really flexible on the feet, on the floor. He can fight from both stances. He's got some really underrated body kicks. I think that would actually serve him well. But Costa's like very willing to have, I wouldn't say he's a fencer to use that parlance, but he's willing to have like whatever fight kind of comes to him. And that can be really dangerous, especially when the guy, like you said, kind of specializes / is good in the same thing / has the same attributes, but arguably is a little bigger, maybe a little better, maybe a little more stronger. So yeah, I saw the plus 170, which I like because I like plus 170s because that's that covers my round robin exposure when I max out with a 5-leg round robin there. But I saw that the line was going down, and even though I'm not a FOMO guy, I was like, you know what? Is it really FOMO, Dan, when you see the line going down in a fight that you already taped? I know you're a little bit, there is some admitted bias here, raising my hand. I'm like, you know what, let's pull the trigger here. And that's one of the plays on the board that I did have locked in. I grabbed them at plus 164. It went down any further. I think I went like just a slightly over a unit, just so I can get that 170 that I was talking about that I like to get back.
Yeah.
Him and another dog, which I'll give you guys before, but that is the one play I locked in. Bias attached, but yeah, I couldn't help it. I had to take a shot.
You're allowed.
All
I got
right,
my bias. I got my bies, guys. I never go against Jim Miller, no matter what.
Jimmy, well, that's Jimmy's fucking
My
Miller
guy,
son.
dude.
I mean, he's the
guy.
It's great. If you're asking who's my favorite lightweight of all time, greatest of all time for me, it's Jimmy Miller. No disrespect to pre 2010 BJ. All right. On that note, Jesus, yeah. On that note, let's go to the next fight, shall we? On this one, this one's opening the card, I believe. Wow, this is another interesting one with the odds now. You know, we got Mattheus CAMILO minus 230, who I just teased with the comeback on Gabe Green, who he's facing plus 195. Gabe Green, your underdog. This one's a 2.5 total, so you've got the over at plus 109 because they think this one's going to finish under as well, albeit slightly. You're under 2.5 minus 140. Now, before I kick this to you, I just want to pay off the T/sidebar because again, like, why is Dan Tom feeding this, or is he going to get back to that little tidbit? I will. I know I can seem like I'm all over the place, but there is a method to the madness. And another 4-2 guy who made my list again. Like, what are you doing, Dan? Putting a 4-2 guy on here. Who's got like an embarrassing like submission loss that you can find on Twitter or whatever. And I was like, well, you got to look at the skill, you got to look at the context, you know. And again, speaking of positive camp changes, this also, you know, a lot of those all those losses happened before Mattheus CAMILO was at Extreme Couture. Now he was at good camps before. He comes from Nova and Yao, and he's a very old school guy. You know, he's I don't like to kiss and tell too much. I'm going to give you guys what resources I got, and hopefully I can bring a unique perspective with my background and positioning. But at the same time, I'm very much respectful. You know, I don't like to overly kiss and tell or whatnot or this or that. But I don't think it's too much to say that Mattheus CAMILO is a guy that nobody wants to spar with an Extreme Couture because he is just a freaking demon. And, you know, maybe not the best control. We could use a little more control, CAMILO. Take care of your toys. But, you know, he is a wrecking machine. I'm glad he's not killing himself to make 145 anymore. I don't know how he made that. Real dangerous. He's got his brown belt now under Pedernera, so he still gets ranked under the Nova and Yao guys. But improved his wrestling and grappling, which was a big hole, the cage wrestling over Extreme Couture. So went on a streak since, beat a guy who was bucking for a Dana White Contender Series spot and beat him, which sounds very Kenny Florian-esque. I believe that's how Kenny Florian got attention to Dana White back in the day, even though there was no Dana White looking for a fight back then. But you know what I'm saying. Of course, Gabe Green on the other side, a very underrated guy, switch stance guy, could fight well from southpaw. Can really get some, you know, action going when you corral him to the cage. Some underrated groundwork that you don't really get to see it. Definitely not his strength. But this number is really interesting, man. They are really, I don't know if like, do I have more, you know, power than I realized or something? Did I hype this guy? Like, what the heck happened, man? Because this line even surprised me. Where are you at with this, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not with this line at all. I got to be honest with you. I've watched as much film as I can on CAMILO, and the one thing I will say about him is it's pretty crazy when you spend so much time breaking film down, you start to compare them to people, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, you know, he does this way, he does it this way. So as I'm watching this kid fight, I'm like, you know, he really does have almost like a Jose Aldo boxing style to him. He has like a fetish to go to the body. And I'm like, wow, like this kid really looks like he's got it. And then I watch an interview with him a couple hours later after I'm done ripping film, and it turns out Jose Aldo's his idol. He patterned his whole game against Overdrive, and I was like, well, here you go. But he's not Jose Aldo. You know what I mean? He's not Jose Aldo. The kid's talented. The kid's got really, really good striking. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to master somebody else's craft, that's when you kind of lose yourself as a person. Like, you got to fight to your attributes. You don't pattern yourself after somebody else. You know, this kid could be doing himself a service, or he could be doing himself an injustice. The thing that worries me with him is sometimes he does get too body happy. And when he does get body happy, his hands, his chin is completely exposed, and you don't want to do that with Gabe Green. One thing about Gabe Green is, like you said, completely underrated fighter. Guy is super, super durable. Yes, Brian Battle finished him, but outside of that, look at some of the fights he's been in. The guy can take a shot. He is a guy who's going to move forward. He's not only a brawler, he's got that style where he will sit in the pocket, he will exchange in a phone booth with you, but he's also very technical. He's a technical fighter. He picks and chooses his spots pretty well, and he's pretty, I wouldn't say he's like really super defensively educated, but he's pretty educated with his weapons. He's pretty educated, when to throw, when not to throw, when to step in, when to step out. He is pretty educated on a long layoff, which is concerning to me. Last fight was May 2023. So obviously almost a year, 2 years to the day. But when I look at CAMILO, it's like, it goes back to my point. Yes, you look talented. You look extremely talented. I like where your mind is. I like where you understand how to go to the body, go to the head, and tie everything together. Unlike guys like RUZIBOEV, you actually go in there and you put up the numbers. But at the end of the day, when you do that and you're not seasoned and you're not going against a certain caliber of fighter, mistakes are made. And when mistakes are made, it's a game of centimeters. And I don't think Gabe Green is the type of guy you want to get into a pocket fight with for 15 minutes. You got to fight him clean. Brian Battle did actually a really good job fighting him, but he's a guy you want to kind of fight clean, because once he starts running downhill on you and you're fighting, kind of on your back foot, he can give you problems. So, and another thing that you said with the way he switches on and off, he actually fights really good in the southpaw stance. Some guys look a little uncomfortable. They switch off because they feel like it's giving you a different look, but they're not doing it to actually fight that way. They're doing it to make you think like, all right, now I'm going to fight you southpaw. Then within 30 seconds, boom, they switch right back off to orthodox. He can fight southpaw. He actually isn't, and I'm not saying I know him. I'm not saying I'm friendly with it. We follow each other on social media, and stuff. And I'm pretty aware of, his training and his regimens and stuff like that. He's actually a really good guy too. And I just think this is a spot. Like I said, I think the number's way too high. I'm not saying to jump on Gabe Green, but Gabe Green's live in this spot. Gabe Green is very live in this spot, because I think, like I said, CAMILO is the type of kid who, he looks pretty. He looks pretty. His movements look good. His body work looks good. Anytime you get a guy that throws body shots, you're like, well, look how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
Especially if you love boxing. Like, the body shots are just beautiful to watch. And he does that. Not many people do, and he does it well. But he also does, tend to leave his defensive liabilities out there when he does that. And I don't think you want to do that with somebody like Green. We got to see CAMILO's chin as it tested. We haven't seen him in super deep water. We haven't seen him in a real mudsling fight yet. We've seen Gabe Green in these fights, smaller cage. They're not going to have to hunt each other down. Gabe Green's going to be able to close off that cage kind of quick. So I think it's going to be a really fun fight. This could be a kind of a fight of the night. This could be a real sneaky fight of the night here. But I think at, plus 200, I think Gabe Green is live here. I'm going to pick him. I'm going to pick Gabe Green in the spot.
Nice. I don't blame you. By the way, Gabe Green seems like a super nice guy. By the way,
yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Interviews. I have friends who are friends with him, and they say the same thing. And great note on the southpaw, by the way, because that's the worry. As far as those counters you're talking about, that CAMILO could have opened himself out for if he gets too body happy, especially from the southpaw stance where the distance is different. That check right hook is just you never leave home without it. That's going to be live. And yeah, no, absolutely. I don't blame anybody for picking or playing the dog here. Again, I'll keep it real with you guys. I'll raise my hand for the bias. And even if I am picking in the same direction of my bias, that doesn't mean I'm going to play it. And in fact, it's just like like with the SODIQ YUSUFf fight. Like, I like Santos, but like the line's out. The more proven product is SODIQ. The betting perspective, that's the dog. That's SODIQ. And even more so with this fight. So don't get it twisted. I'm not just because he's my guy, but also there's bias for, fighters I put in my prospect article. Not that I haven't picked against him before. I actually have once, right? But it does feel kind of funny when you're like, wow, I'm picking it against this guy, even though I just said he's going to be a really good prospect, and it always kind of feels funny from that end. So I do feel, a bit pressured to pick my guy here. That being said, I will add some analysis that is contrary to the SODIQ one, where, like I said, I was keeping that same energy as well for the SODIQ fight. But I did say that the weight at 155, the weight is going to benefit SODIQ, right? Well, this fight's at 155, and it's the opposite. I think it benefits the favorite here, CAMILO. Like I said, CAMILO used to kill himself to make 145. This guy is a tank at 155. It's where he should be. Whereas Gabe Green, although he's fought at 55 before, he's mainly fought at 70s for the UFC tenure. He is not a huge guy, but like he looks like deceptively thick. It looks like it takes him definitely some work to get down to 55s. And we've even seen, the one thing that is, I think, the reason why outside of the layoff is the durability. You know, even though Gabe Green is game, he can, you know, randomly be put out of there early. He can be winning around and then be dropped as well. We saw that in earlier fights. Sorry, the name's escaping me right now, but he's been dropped in rounds that he's been winning before. So I think that's the worry here. And now coming off a layoff, you got a big cut. Again, you got to go back to that 155-pound cut. You know, he's still a young guy, so he's not old by any means, but he is getting older, right? And I don't know if you share this, you know, Mike, with your, you know, between your boxing physiology knowledge, but like when a guy's cutting weight, I feel like the worst people to fight are body punchers or body kickers and punchers in general. Now, obviously, he's trying to model himself to be a boxer puncher like a Jose Aldo, but to your point, he ain't there yet. He ain't. Aldo's freaking great, but you know, he's one of the best boxers, defensive fighters. He's not there yet, but he is a puncher. I think we can agree, and he is a body puncher. And it's almost as good as sex for me. Like, oh, somebody go throw down a towel over there. If somebody's throwing too many body shots, like, you know, damn, Tom might need to cool off. Like, I'm a huge body punching fan, so I'm all about that. So I still will stick with my pick for Camilo, but believe me, folks, I'm not betting Camilo here. I do not like the line. I feel like this is a dog or pass spot for what that's worth.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, next fight we got who we got here? Is this another lightweight fight here? Sorry.
Lightweight, yep.
Gordon versus Moises. Oh, here we go, baby. Jared Gordon, minus 116. THIAGO Moises, minus 104. The total, 2.5. This one's definitely, think they're going over. Over 2.5, minus 300. Under 2.5, plus 210. Before I kick it to you, this is the other underdog play I locked in, except he is no longer a dog. Usually I'm not this guy, by the way. So I hate being this guy right now because I usually hate this guy. And I'm never this guy. But I am the CLV guy. It looks to be, unless it does a complete flip. And again, CLV means nothing. It's about picking the side, folks. I try not. It is important to get good prices as a gambler. Don't get me wrong. All those pennies add up in the long term. I'm more worried about getting the side right. So I try not to get too excited about that. But again, I'm not usually not a FOMO guy, but thankfully to this show, it's encouraging me to get my analysis a little earlier. And I was like, you know, the immediate thing that just jumped off the card to me was Jared Gordon. And it's nothing against THIAGO Moises. I've cashed THIAGO Moises against, I believe, as an underdog against who was it? The great ape, Alexander Hernandez, right? Factory X guy. So I got love for THIAGO Moises. I've cashed on him too, but I've never been a big believer against Moises. Now, it's not the complete auto fade like when Moises faces a southpaw, because I don't have the record in front of me, but even going back to regional talents like Robert Watley on the regional scene to UFC level talents, THIAGO Moises is allergic to southpaws, but he is also doesn't like pressure and output. And if a guy can have a pressuring heavy style and some output and not be scared away from the one or two power-sided kicks and rear punch counter threats that Moises loves to spam and show, then I like picking against him. And apparently I'm not too crazy because the line did move in my favor. But yeah, I fired a little more, 1.5 unit. It was a smaller number with a little, and I was a little more confident on this one than I am the EROSA. Not by much. Not that I'm super confident on either, but confident enough to play it for what it's worth. I got Jared Gordon here. Feel free to go against me or play devil's advocate.
These fucking guys, dude. These guys, they both drive me nuts, man. Especially THIAGO Moises. If you really think about it, I mean, when I break it down, I think THIAGO Moises is a super talented fighter. Like, he's got all the talent, like super talented. Sure. I mean, great grappler, you know, solid leg kicks, you know, good athletic frame. But this guy, getting him to show up or getting him to follow the right game plan is like fucking pulling the teeth out of somebody's mouth. It's just, it drives me nuts. And it's like you're looking at these fights that he's matched up with, and you're like, bro, there's no reason. Like, if I was in this, I'd be like, there's no reason why you don't beat this guy. Like, this is how you beat this guy. And then he does something completely opposite. So on the flip side, you got Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon is a guy who, you know, very underrated grappling, good wrestling, you know, trained under Henzo for a long time. A dog. Like, he's gonna come out and he's gonna be that dog. But he's questionable to me at times too. Like sometimes he gets a little too caught up in the moment, and it's like, all right, you don't need to. It's almost like sometimes when you got in that the fighter's injured and you want the guy to pounce, but you're like, you still got to be careful. He's still got power. Like that's what happens with Gordon sometimes when he puts you in trouble. He gets a little too caught up in the moment, so he scares me too. But when I look at this fight, like I keep going back to who do I want to pick? Like who's the like if you really look at their styles and their personalities and just their track record, who do I want to pick? I want to pick Jared Gordon. Like I want to say Jared Gordon is just going to be the dog in there, smaller cage. He's going to push the fight to Moises. Moises is going to look like he's out to fucking lunch. And it's just going to be like a one of those affairs where you just, if you're a Thiago Moises backer, you're going to be like, God damn it. But I'm going Moises. I don't know. There's something about him where like, I know he's got it in him. I know if he puts his tools together and he puts the chess pieces in the right spot, he beats Jared Gordon. You know, I can't argue with you at all for picking Jared Gordon. I really, really can't. I just look at who has more paths to win this fight, who's more capable of winning the fight. And it goes back to Thiago Moises. But like I said, you got to put those capabilities to use or else you're fucking useless at that point. So give me Thiago Moises in a I'm going to close my eyes and pick fight.
No worries. And you know, yeah, to be fair, to bring some criticism from my side to the Gordon side as well, is he seems like the opposite, where like Thiago Moises puts the hurdles in front of him, you know, himself by not going to the right game plan, fighting with his back to the fence, low output, making you pull your hair out. Whereas Gordon, you know, he's a dog. He will fight for your money. He actually will pressure forward and get out there. But dude, that guy just seems to have like terrible luck. Like he'll end up in like the most precarious positions.
That's what I mean. Yeah, he sometimes he overcommits.
Or there's just always random stories where it's like you find out after the fact, like, oh yeah, I have like this finger stitched together because my mom was attacked by a baseball bat by some junkie on the street. That's a real story, by the way. Like he's the most random luck. Like I'm like, what is going on, Jared? You already had crazy luck when you were like doing it to yourself as a drug addict.
And he's got some story, man. He's got some story. His life story. He's got some story.
Very impressed. I love Jared Gordon, by the way. Seems like a real nice guy. But you're absolutely right. There is risks involved with betting him as well. So I don't want to overlook that. But yeah, I got Jared Gordon here. We'll push on to the next fight here. Oh man, you know, you mentioned one of the best Contender Series fights ever, which absolutely agree, right? Mike Davis versus SODIQ YUSUFF. But Yadier Del Valle was in one of the best Contender Series fights, at least of his season. He comes in as a favorite at -140 with the comeback on Connor the Controller. I don't know why to say it creepy. Matthews at +330.
Creep. You sound like an OnlyFans stalker.
Yeah. I don't know why. The Controller is just a weird name. Over 2.5, -150. Under 2.5 rounds, +120. I was a little surprised by this one. This feels like a more violent fight to me. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do they get the favorite right? Did they get the total right? Or do you think this is going to be a little more violent than they're leading on?
Connor Matthews to me, like he reminds me of one of those guys back in the day, like back in the UFC where there wasn't a lot of technique involved. It was just like you brawl. Like Connor Matthews just seems like that guy to me. He just seems like he's going to go in there and he's going to throw shit against the wall and see if it sticks. I just don't think that works here. You know, I don't think that works in the UFC, not only in this fight. I just think like that'll take you so far. You know, yes, maybe you'll find a spot here and there. Maybe you'll get a guy to step on a landmine, but you gotta have, and when you're at this level, you have to have a baseline of really good technique in something, whether it's boxing, whether it's wrestling, whether it's grappling. And I just look at him when he comes in. I look at him kind of like a bull in the china shop, just somebody coming in. He's looking to brawl. He'll go wherever you want to take the fight, and he's going to try. He's going to fight. But majority of the time, this guy's going to be unsuccessful. So, like, I really don't have much to add to this fight. I'm a big technical guy. I'm more into technique, more into creating your avenues and creating your space. And even though Connor Matthews is a guy who does that, he does it terribly. Like there's nothing tied behind it. It's just let's have chaos, let's have a hurricane and see if we can break the grandfather clock. You know, and I just think it's not gonna work. It's not gonna fare well with him here. I think that Del Valle ends up knocking him out at some point.
Let's be honest. It's because he's a part of the New England cartel, Mike. That's why you don't like him. Let's be honest.
I know, bro. Boston's going down tonight, boys and girls. I wore this shirt tonight. I wore this shirt green because this is the funeral for the Boston Celtics tonight. Let's go, Knicks.
That's what's up. That's what's up. By the way, follow my guy at Mad Lab MMA because he'll talk some sports with you on the timeline, much more than I will. Not that I won't talk to you, but I just don't talk. I don't follow basketball. I'm more of a '90s basketball guy. Like I was last following the Knicks when they had John Starks and my guy Charles Oakley. I mean, oh my goodness.
Oh,
I think I did a list.
he owned a bunch of car washes in New York for a while.
Oh, I bet that guy seems like a gangster. I think he made my top 10 list for like NBA fighters that could have translated. I think I had two New York Knicks on there. I think I had Charles Oakley, and I had to have
Anthony
Willis
Mason.
Reed.
What about Anthony Mason?
Anthony Mason. Oh yeah, he probably was an honorable mention. I had Willis Reed on there for the highlight when he took out the whole Lakers bench. I mean, 1971. Oh, yeah. I mean that New York team. Hopefully you guys have more to get happy about here. But back to Del Valle. So Del Valle, he's trains out of Houston, Texas. For what that's worth, he trains out of the Main Street boxing gym, which used to be 4 Ounce Fight Club. Basically, that's Derek Lewis camp crew Bob there. Kevin Holland also trains out of there, and more notable, I guess, because he's more his size. I think they train a lot together. But what's his name? Daniel Pineda, real talented grappler. UFC vet.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah, real fun. Love that guy's fights, dude. Do or die. So he's got really good people training with him. You could see he's got some osmosis there. But I mean, you say Conor. I agree. Conor Matthews. I think he's a little more. He tries not to be a brawler. But to your point, he is throwing. I think you phrased it perfectly, Mike, when you said he's throwing shit to see what sticks. And that's definitely where he gets his problem, because Del Valle, in my opinion, is more of a focused brawler. Maybe doesn't show as much dynamism from
dynamism. Sounds like a
dynamism from range. He part of my notes on Del Valle, he could use more of a range game. Like Conor Matthews, he'll at least do the switch to southpaw and kick thing. It's not like a fully fledged southpaw game like a Gabe Green. I'm glad you made that comparison, because so many guys fake that southpaw stance, to your point, Mike. And Conor Matthews might be one of more of those. He lists himself as a southpaw, but he'll switch a lot. And Del Valle is a southpaw. So like I always say, guys, southpaw versus southpaw, you got extra volatility. And I think that's going to lend itself to the violence. And I feel like the under is just calling my name. I mean, it's just like, I feel like you're picking Del Valle. I feel like at least, 7.5, maybe even 8 out of 10, he's going to finish in this fight. And if that's the case, under 2.5, much less under 2.5 at plus money, both the total set and the plus number attached does not make a lot of sense to me. I have PTSD from playing unders, folks, but this one is calling me. And I'm picking Del Valle, but we'll see where I end up as far as a totals play there.
Agreed. Well, if you want to get a little tricky, if you want to, you got to be a little bit more juice. But like if you're saying, over under 1.5, you could take an exotic if you have it. I know DraftKings has it, my books have it, but you could do does not start round 3. So this way you're getting the other half. You know what I mean? You're getting the other half of the round.
I do have those access to those. You're right.
You're gonna pay a little bit more juice. You're gonna pay a little bit more juice, but like sometimes I've become a little bit too much with them because I've been falling in love with them a little bit. But sometimes I tie those into some parlays. You know what I mean? Like last week I had a BSD to start round 2. And I was sweating my balls off with that fight because he almost finished the fight. But some of those exotics are good. You just got to keep your eye out on them. I usually wait a little bit. Like, I'm not too much of an early guy. I don't believe in fighting. It's a little bit different. To me, weigh-ins mean so much.
Yes.
So much weigh-ins mean. Because then you find yourself hedging out this and that. So usually around Friday afternoon, like I have a streamline of everything. Usually Friday afternoon is when I go on my site and I throw everything in. There's sometimes like the Valentina one I stabbed quick because I honestly thought maybe that line would flip. I thought it was crazy.
Yes, sure.
And she's got a history of making weight. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna take this one early. But for the most part, in these fights like this, it's important to really watch the weigh-ins.
Yeah, great point. And that's another reason why, folks, when I said that I hate that I'm the early better, I'm normally not. That's part of the reason, because I'm more of the philosophy of Mike. You wait for weigh-ins, and also you never be afraid to fade the public, especially someone like myself, where I'm not a huge chalk better. I should be more of one, to be honest. I need to be more smarter about finding those opportunities. But I'm a guy who likes dogs anyways. I like sniping, like you said, like certain specialty props. you don't get too much movement on those in the negative way. I think more the FOMO happens if you're a big chalk player and you're like, oh, he's minus 255 now, but he's going to close at -4, so I got to jump on it. And that's usually the logic a lot. And I'm not hating on that. Like, I get it. I'm just saying I'm more along the lines of you, Micah, whether it's chalk, whether it's dogs. I'd rather just have the more accurate read and play off that to weigh-ins, man.
If it gets out of control and if it gets out of reach, then you pass on it. You pass on it, or you try to find another angle. But I've done it so many times, bro, where I take a fighter early and then all of a sudden I'm like, Jesus Christ, they look like fucking they're walking on death's door. Then you find yourself hedging out and you're trying to pivot away. So fighting is the one sport, like, you got to be careful with when and how you bet. You really better make sure historically they make weight, they look good making weight. You got to really know your X's and O's with that.
Yep, especially because, and this is going to be relevant and segue us to the next fight, we have a ton of fighters that are either fighting on shortened camps, which is kind of this fight as well as coming off of injury and or just long layoffs, right? And that is the case here. We got LUANA Santos -175 coming back up to bantamweight. The comeback on TAINARA Lisboa +150. She's not been seen since 2023. The total set for this fight at 2.5, over 2.5, -275, which is about standard. You could even argue low for a women's fight, under 2.5 +206. Don't disagree there. Just let me give a little setup before I bounce this one back to you. LUANA Santos, she has fought at 135 throughout her career, even in the UFC. Went back to watch that fight at Edgar, where she did come in heavy. She actually comported herself quite well against another judoka. That was 2 judo black belts going against each other. Santos also a blue belt in BJJ. I gotta imagine she's a purple by now, but you know how fighters are. You can go to their Instagram and sometimes see the promotion, sometimes not, because when you're training MMA, you really don't train in the gi too much. I mean, even like losers like me have been on like the 13-year purple belt program forever. So you can't put too much weight in whatever ranks people are, right? That being said, Lisboa, on the other hand, she's coming back from a complete knee reconstruction she has. She had her cartilage redone in her left knee, and watching her recovery has been very long. She's been very arduous, but it looks like she's been very dedicated. She looks like she's in really good shape now. She's a good kickboxer, has multiple accolades as far as that goes. You never know what to make of it. She actually did go to Thailand to get some of her accolades, and she is older, so she, makes sense that she's earned a lot of these kickboxing accolades. Lisboa about 34, I believe. LUANA Santos about 9 or 8 years younger, right in her mid-20s, about 25. I believe I just taped this fight, so it's off the top of my head. But Lisboa, I actually liked her style. She seemed pretty competent from up top. And I know, this fight was a while ago, but you look at her last fight against Raven Oliveira, who another fighter, again, we haven't seen since or really before at a UFC level. So hard to know how much stock to put into that fight. That being said, it was not a good look. When you come into round 3 of fight, she's practically controlling, getting on top with ease. And she tries the classic WMMA head and arm throw, a judo type throw, except she doesn't have the judo background clearly like a LUANA Santos does. So she actually tips Oliveira right on top of her. And that could be a death sentence. And, I'm sure she's in great shape. I'm sure she's improved. And I say that with a question mark because, again, she's coming back from a serious injury. So how much could have Lisboa improved? She is the more natural bantamweight. She used to fight at featherweight, right? And again, how I corrected myself, I didn't want to discount size because size does matter. I would argue it could arguably matter even more so, at least from a predictive nature when it comes to these women fights, whether they're at bantamweight or especially at flyweight, right? Where a lot of the times you look at it, a lot of the times it is the bigger fighter who came down from bantamweight who is, typically winning. So Lisboa will have size, but I don't know if that size is going to dissuade Santos, and again, want to factor in the smaller cage. So you are going to get a lot more clinches. I think it's going to be a clinch heavy fight. And that I'm going to favor the judo black belt LUANA Santos, who I interviewed out when I was covering LFA here just a couple months ago. She looked in great shape. She looks much better right now at 135 than she did going in heavy against Eggers. She's got a solid crew out here. So I'm going to go with Santos. Sorry to take a lot of meat off the bone heavy. I was opinionated on this.
No,
fresh.
Mike, I agree. I don't got really too much to add to that. The only couple caveats I will add to that is, the one thing that I would say negatively that concerns me with this fight for LUANA Santos is one, I'm going to go all the way back to the Juliana Miller fight when she got to that scrap with her. That fight really hasn't aged all that well because even though Miller ended up getting a good win, as of late, her striking is very pedestrian, and she got caught up in these crazy firefights with her where it looked like they were like slap boxing at the end. Miller was completely gassed out. She was just kind of flailing her arms. She's improved, she's improved since then. But the things that the couple things that I do know, I think people overrate her striking a little bit too much. I don't think she's super crisp. I think nothing really comes directly down the center line. She kind of just loads up on things and throws, which is fine. I'm not, there's a lot of room for mistakes when you're not at that top tier level. At least she's trying it. Some people don't even pull the trigger. But one thing I used to can't stand that Michelle Waterson used to do was she used to do this head and arm throw. And it was such a 50-50 high risk, high reward throw that if it worked, great. You land in a great position. You're in side control, fantastic. But if it doesn't work, you end up on bottom. And she's ended up on bottom quite a few times trying this head and arm throw. And it's her judo background. This is what, she's used to doing these hip throws, and they don't always work all the time. You know what I mean? And she can actually be doing herself more detriment than good in situations like that, where she goes for a head and arm throw, and now she ends up on the bottom. And when she's on the bottom, she doesn't have much of a get up game. Like, she really doesn't. She has been caught on the bottom a little bit. She kind of stalls. She's kind of looking to see what she's doing. She's not shrimping out or really super, being super active. So that concerns me with her, because she could be winning a round. She could be, halfway through a round. They clinch up. She goes for this head and arm throw, and Lisboa ends up on top. And there you go. There goes the round. So that's a concern for me. As far as Lisboa, like I said, I think she has the chops to win this fight. But listen, I don't care what you look like in the gym. I know she's been hurt. I know she's training. Working out in the gym, hitting mitts and sparring is completely different than live time. You don't know what her timing is going to be like. You don't know, if she's going to be able to really find her range that well. The fight might come a little too quick for her in there when you're on that much of a layoff. So, although I do think there's plenty of paths for her to win this fight, like even off of mistakes of LUANA Santos, I got to go with Santos just because she's been the more active fighter.
100%. And this is also very much a wait and see spot, because you've got layoffs, you've got injuries, you've got people moving up in weight. So you've got questions on both sides, really. I'm going to pick Santos. I will say, if I am desperate for, like, I need big plus numbers for a round robin, is how you usually play them, folks. Now, if I'm desperate to fill a leg, maybe I look at Santos by submission, although, her most probable outcome is winning a gross, grindy decision here. But maybe you throw it by sub, because, again, I really, the top game and the bottom game from Lisboa look completely different. It went from purple belt on top to, like, not even a one stripe white belt on bottom. Like, it looked real bad.
Yeah.
Like, insanely bad. So
Lisboa to me is live.
Yeah, especially if it's just a clinch fence against the cage, which is most likely what the odds as well, and the analysis is suggesting. But yeah, I'm going to go with Santos. But yeah, probably nothing on this fight for me, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Next fight, another one. We'll see. Denise Gomez minus 550. Comeback on Elise Reed plus 400. This one just a 1.5. Because go minus under, so but the books check themselves, because there is a bit of a do or die nature. I'll just say that, I do favor Denise Gomez. She has the grappling edge. It's in the smaller cage that tends to favor the grappler. And Elise Reed, the story's always been the same on her. She's got the karate, kickboxing, the poor woman's female Wonder Boy-esque, if you will. But she's never, made those gym changes to train with other competition to improve the wrestling. She's still out there. I don't know if it's South Carolina or where it is, but she has her own gym, so she's not really moving anywhere. She just kind of runs her business, comes out, and she puts up a good fight for early. But if a girl's got good grappling or staying power, I tend to auto pick against Elise Reed. No offense to Elise Reed. That's what I see here. I don't like the line, though. Do you have any opinions on this one, Mike?
No, the only thing I'll say, if I'm not into MMA math in any way, shape, or form, but if you are into MMA math, Elise Reed is on a rotating door of wins and losses her entire UFC slate. It's loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. So technically, if you are into MMA math, which I'm not, she's up for a loss. That pattern could continue. But Elise Reed, to me, it's like she loses to everybody that she's supposed to lose to, and she beats everyone she's kind of supposed to beat. She lost to Eubanks, beat Corey McKenna, lost to Sam Hughes, beat Melissa Martinez, lost to Luke Boomy, beat Jin Fry, which I actually, that to me, that's a decent win. I think Jin Fry is a pretty tough, undersized, but that was a good win. Lost to Loopy and then beat a 40-year-old Jessica Pena. So it's like, all right, you're beating the people you're kind of supposed to beat. You're kind of keeping your back off the wall. But what's going to happen, like you said, when you fight somebody that's going to be in your face, and Denise Gomes is going to be in her face for 15 minutes. She's going to throw heavy leather. She gets violent in there. I personally think that Denise Gomes is probably going to get her out of there. I don't like the line when it comes to female MMA like this at this level. Like anything can happen, but if I had gun to head, I would say that at some point in time, second or third round, Gomes gets her out of there.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know what Gomes is being priced, if she's being priced as heavily on DraftKings as well. But she could be low key for a finish and some takedowns, which obviously score high on that platform. I unfortunately don't play it myself here in Vegas. We get locked out of those fun and games. But good ad. And I guess last thing, I'll just shout the Pat Mayo CF dot model, because this one fits it. You got the undercard, greasy, giant underdog. But I don't even like it from that perspective, to be honest. Like I play Tout Master, which is like a fantasy picks contest where you get more for your underdog picks than you do for your favorites. So it encourages you to pick underdogs, right? So a lot of people will just take the big underdogs for fun, especially on these CF dot model, so to speak, type fights. But I don't even know if I'm going to take Elise Reed in that. Like that's how little confidence.
She's not athletic, man. She's not coordinated. I could see if she had speed, if she knew how to skirt the cage, if she knew how to really play with the warning track. She just doesn't. She's very north and south.
Yep. Absolutely. Speaking of South, I imagine he's from South Korea. We got HYUNSUNG Park minus 175 at the comeback on Carlos Hernandez plus 150. Expected to go over. They set the totals at 2.5, over 2.5, minus 250, the under 2.5, plus 189. Now, I want to take this fight further before I have strong opinions on this, but before I throw it to you, Mike, I just want to point out that Carlos Hernandez, a very underrated fighter, underrated as far as he can be a fun dance partner, and some underrated skills in the wrestling and scrambling department, which is notable considering this is the smaller cage of the Apex, which is very much suits a Carlos Hernandez style fight. But you know me and my PTSD of the Koreans. I should have listened to my advice stronger. I was really high on Best Cat talking about his in and out movement, gets the knockout, and I said stay away from Korea because they'll brawl. And I went against those advice. So perhaps I have some PTSD that is pushing me toward the Hernandez side, but I got to take this one more. Do you have a strong opinion on this one, Mike?
When I watch Carlos Hernandez, it's just the thing with him is that what makes him tricky is his movement. Like he doesn't have your traditional movement. Like he moves laterally, he moves north and south, but it's so unchained, it's so awkward and so odd that you got to kind of track him down. You got to kind of find him. Now, if they were in an arena with a bigger cage, I'd be like, all right, Park's gonna have an issue tracking this guy down. He's literally all over the place. Smaller cage, so he's not gonna have to do that. One thing I will say about Hernandez is if this fight hits the ground, for the first 3 seconds that it hits the ground, Hernandez is live to do anything because he's got great scrambling ability. But once you lock him down, he seems like he kind of accepts position a little bit. Very good scrambler. I mean, in a scramble, the kid's wiry. He gets out of all these crazy positions, but it's almost like hot potato. As soon as his ass hits the ground, he has to be like a top. He has to get his hips, ignited and do something. But once you kind of lock him down, all of a sudden that threat is gone. That kind of wiry threat is gone. So there's just something about this fight that I think that the smaller cage might be more of a detriment to him because he's going to have that ability to scramble for those moments. He's going to have that ability to maybe make something happen. But what I think it's going to harm him is it's going to take away that movement. He's not going to be able to utilize that movement to keep Park guessing. And I think that's what makes Hernandez successful. He uses that movement to kind of keep you guessing, wondering if he's going to shoot, wondering if he's, what angle he's going to attack on. What happens when he doesn't have that no more and he has to fight a little bit more traditional? When that warning track is coming on him a lot quicker than it is in the then Park can maybe hunt him down and lock him down. And for my money, I just think Park is a little bit more crisp, a little bit more fundamentally tied together better than Hernandez, where Hernandez is very good, very talented, but a little bit more free in chaos. And I think if Park can hone that in and kind of control that, I think Park wins this fight.
All right. I like it. We got a little bit of dissension. Not that I have a strong take on this one. I'm gonna do a little more study for it to see where I land, but that's a really good analysis there. Nothing, I think we want to, or anybody should be, rushing to the window at here, looking even at props and whatnot. Again, I think you get yourself into more trouble playing with totals or props with this kind of a fight. This might look for its close enough price where it's pick a side and ride, where decent dog price if you like it, and decent favorite
Oh,
price.
I wouldn't lay the 250 on Park. That I'll tell you. I would not lay minus 250 on Park.
Overs minus 250, Park's minus 175, which is still not a great number, by the way.
No, I still wouldn't lay that. I still wouldn't lay
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I still wouldn't.
No, I'm frugal, man. For me, playable chalk, I guess it's not that it has to be for you guys, not for everybody, but my range for playable chalk is usually minus 150 or under.
Yeah. Well, if you want to go off, if you want to
that.
cut the numbers down too, like I said, DraftKings or it depends what book you have, but you can ask my guys. I got my site, the madlabmma.com, and when I put my stuff in, there's a lot of times where if, let's say this fight minus 175, I'm just saying the number, I'm not saying this fight, the number minus 175. I'm like, I'm not feeling it, but I'm pretty confident he's going to win the fight. I'll take him and maybe the over 1.5. So him to win over 1.5, that'll bring it maybe to minus 110. You know what I mean? So you got to look at the exact. You got to get creative because the books are getting sharper. The books are getting sharper, and the whole name of the game is us versus them. Like people come on these shows, they act like who's better than who. We're kind of all on the same team. We're all trying to beat the Voltron. So you got to get creative. You got to get creative, and sometimes, yes, it's dangerous. The real hardcore players will look down on parlays and look down on things like that because you are cutting your legs out. They're kind of a bait to get the suckers, but sometimes in fighting they do pay off. So look at the exotics, get creative.
Absolutely. That really, really well put there. And that would you read my mind as far as the one exotic that was popping in my mind. The one SGP, if you will, was what would be the over, tied with who you like there, especially as the favorite, get a better price. Speaking of favorites, perhaps maybe we can find a way to get a better price because pretty high, which is normal for TECIA Pennington, minus 320 with a comeback on LUANA Pinheiro, plus 265. Overs are at 2.5 as they are stacked heavily for a TECIA fight to go over 2.5, minus 455, under 2.5. Plus 355. So unless you're feeling bullish on an under, you're not going to be cutting prices too much with that over. But you could get maybe.
Wait a minute, those odds aren't right.
I switched up the money line odds because I feel like the money line odds were right. But are the overs off too? Is the over off as well?
No, the money line odds. TECIA is a plus 260. No.
Yeah, no, she's not. No. I read her as a favorite. Yeah, I saw that.
I was going to say because I thought the screen. I thought what I saw on the screen was like I was like, what?
Yeah, I think on the screen. I think on the screen it popped up. It popped up backwards there, but TECIA is the big favorite, which is normal for her. She's gotten some really tough decisions. I know it's a close women's fight that you can't complain about, but I still will say that shout out to my PYN crew. Mackenzie Dern versus TECIA Torres is the robbery of the year every year. TECIA Torres, that's the one thing you got to worry about though is something I hate, and I'm sure you as well coming from boxing, because coming from boxing you actually understand punches, quality striking, body work, counters, but judges traditionally don't reward body work or counters, and they can get fooled by I call it slop striking. There's a lot of Mackenzie Dern striking, that big, heavy, like it could be impressive to the new, ooh, that sounded, big swing. Ooh, big
the optics.
Ooh. Yeah, TECIA Torres is always at risk to lose those, sadly. So part of me always wants to factor that into the line. But I do think she rolls here. And I want to see what you think. But LUANA Pinheiro, so my main thing on her, she does have skills kind of everywhere, but here is the glaring hole when you watch her tape is she tends to fade and fight not just fade like gassing, she looks like she just fights worse as the fight goes on. And part of me thinks maybe I'm still living in 2015 here, Mike. You come in and correct me, but I could see if it is going Pennington's way, she gets in her classic tiny tornado flurry. Could this maybe we get maybe one of the rare TECIA Torres stoppages? Maybe we sprinkle on a round 3 in case she is flowing and this girl is gassing. But I'm of course being very wishful thinking here. I think the most likely outcome is a Torres, TECIA Pennington, I should say, decision. But Mike, what do you got on this fight? Anything?
Yeah, so I'll make it quick. I mean, obviously the fallback on this is if you're picking Pennington, you're picking her by decision. She's just been a decision rider. However, what another thing that I really push on is you got to also remember the business of the UFC. The UFC at the end of the day is entertainment. It's a business, and they do have their favorites, despite you want to believe that or not. Dana White is very, very, very good friends with Rocky Pennington. Like they're very, very close. So which in turn, obviously, you know, he is very close with TECIA. So this fight automatically being lined up, this is a fight for her to win. You got LUANA Pinheiro. She's obviously on a 3-fight losing streak. Her back is against the wall. This is like kind of their way of giving TECIA a fight, bringing some money into the house, getting Pinheiro off the resume. We move on. However, what I will say about Pennington is you were just kind of reading my mind, because even though she is really a hardcore decision rider, she's been fighting with a lot of attitude, you know, as of late, like a lot of attitude. And I think it was because of that Mackenzie Dern loss. I think like she has got a chip on her shoulder now. And even in the Richie fight, Richie fight, I mean, come on, let's be honest with that fight, you know. And I think she comes out now with a little bit more aggression, not wanting to leave it in the hands of the judges. Now, listen, you have to have the attributes to be able to succeed in that, but it's not a lack of trying anymore. Where I think in the past, she's so athletic, she's so fast, she's so small for the division, she can kind of get in and out of certain situations because of her size, that she was utilizing that more than she is, I'm going to bite down on the mouthpiece now and I'm going to throw. And that's what she's doing now. You know what I mean? That's what she seems to be doing now. So I do like that with her. I do expect her to win this fight. I lean towards decision, but I'll tell you one thing. I would not be shocked if any way, shape, or form if she kind of maybe hunts out like a finish, or maybe like a referee stoppage. Like I could see that bite me in the ass. Like if I take Tecia Torres by decision, I'm like, well, that's why it happened, because I took her by decision. You know, so I'm going to go Tecia Torres by decision, but that's not out of bounds. That's not an out of bounds take that you have.
Yeah, I mean, especially they're putting plus 2,200 to plus 2,700 numbers on there. Again, if you like to have a fun round robin like me, round robin, basically you got to pick high odds, whether you do 4 or 5 legs is the traditional, and you need at least 2 of those legs to cash. And don't get me wrong, it's a very low percentage thing, just like gambling in general. You almost have to kind of look at it as a donation, but I look at it like this: instead of going out and be like, oh, this looks sexy, I want to sprinkle on that, I want to sprinkle, and then I'm overexposed. You know, I'll kind of consolidate all those like high odds plays that I like, but I don't have enough balls to like really full throated put any real units behind. Maybe I'll congregate them all together behind a unit or 1.7 units and see what kind of can blossom out of there. Tecia Torres by decision, if you wanted to play that straight up though, it is, oh my goodness, almost 2 to 1. Yeah, I mean, unless you're a parlay player, you're just throwing the money line in there for Tecia. Yeah, maybe sprinkle in round 3 for a fun little bonus. And remember us if it hits.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, I mean, like I said, that's a long shot, but why not? Like if you're on a card like this, you know, you want to have a little fun. We're going on a little bit of a break. We're not going to have any fights next week.
That's right.
Why not? If you're up a little bit, you want to throw $10, $20 on it. I mean, who knows? Anything can happen.
Absolutely. Well, you're right. That wraps us up for this week. And again, folks, hit us up. Hit my guy Mike up at Mad Lab MMA. He also has a website,
come down to the we don't only do MMA. We're one of the only sites that do boxing as well, which we've been doing really, really good with boxing. We had 2 sweeps in a row, 2 weeks in a row. Last week we missed a sweep, but we tie it all together. We tie everything together. We do MMA. I do all my content with that. We have something called the Fight Brain that does, it's me versus the Fight Brain. So it's my eye test versus all the boxing and the MMA. I break everything down. And then I got the Fight Brain that does everything from a historical breakdown, data analytics breakdown, and they give their pick. And we kind of go head to head. So you got kind of the best of both worlds. Great community. You know, everything is under one umbrella. So it's like we have guys in there doing NBA, doing NFL, doing everything. It's just sole focus is obviously boxing and MMA, a bit of everything. So if you want to come check us out, we have multiple packages available, weeks, months, year. The madlabmma.com. Love to have you.
Awesome. And of course, you guys can find me at Dan Tom MMA on all social platforms, mainly on the artist formerly known as Twitter. That's where I link I'll post my analysis clip from video analysis, Southpaw reports, all the analysis I do over with Junkie to see my final picks. But I mainly mention our social handles. So I really want you guys to be interactive with the show. Again, we don't want you to feel like you guys are losing the show. All you guys are getting is more on this channel. And I want you to be a part of it. In fact, So please reach out to us at Mad Lab MMA, at Dan Tom MMA. Like, hey, if you guys could do your favorite / consensus dog, or you could do or do your favorite / consensus favorite. What's your favorite parlay piece? What's your favorite? Well, whatever. Give us some of these ideas, because we're obviously not gonna, we're not gonna, steal a PRP or steal a cycle or whatever else other people have branded out there. We're gonna do our own, but we want you guys to be a part of it. We want it to be organic. We're not trying to force that or anything else on you guys. We want it to be fun and involved, and I think we can all get behind that. And hopefully, you guys can use our analysis to help bulk up, your arsenal to make better picks and plays for the weekend. That's the goal here. We're not telling you what to do, who to bet on, or this or that, but we are going to give you a bunch of information from our experience, our research, and our work that we're going to be putting in hard for you guys every week. One thing, Mike, I do want to do before we get out of here, and not enough shows do, and they do. The Dogger Pass podcast is one of the few that did it, thankfully. But I want to recap what we just our fight picks. I know some of these we aren't strong on, but we'll at least just want to go through a quick top to bottom and tell you what we agreed on. We did that last show. I think that's good for this show, right?
Yeah, and I do want to say one more thing before you do that.
Please.
We have next week off. Obviously, there's no card. I don't think there's a card next week, right? So
no card next week.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is, because I want you guys to understand, the following show, we will have situations where we're going to have maybe a parlay built for you guys, like a high profiting parlay, long shot parlay, something like that. We're going to discuss that, obviously off the air. And then me and him are obviously going to do fun bets where I'm going to, smack him around and make him lose a lot of his money and make him drink beer and shit like that. So we're going to be doing all that stuff, but we're going to take the whole next week to kind of, functionalize all that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And the next card, of course, will be May 31st card. Will be before May 31st, of course, but the card goes down May 34th. Back in the Apex, that's going to be Blanchfield versus Barber. So we'll be back for this one. But before we get out of here, let's recap Burns versus Morales. Of course, we both picked Morales for our picks, correct, Mike? But we're also, we're not exactly excited about the prices there. Not telling you to rush out either way. We both picked Bellato, correct? We even though that price is big, we still felt, that's the right pick there, correct?
Yep.
Now we were split. I believe Mike had YUSUFf. I had Santos, but I admitted the bias in my pick, and as well as, not that this makes it right, of course, but did say that this feels like a real Dogger Pass spot. I think we were in agreement on that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and even though we both picked RUZIBOEV, I feel like this is like one of our least favorite picks as well on the card, where I doubt you'll see much exposure from either me or Mike on RUZIBOEV. You'll probably see my crazy ass trying to have some action on Dustin STOLTZFUS, but yeah, we officially picked the favorite. But again, it also kind of, you could argue, a Dogger Pass there, correct, Mike?
Yep.
All right. We both actually like the dog Julian EROSA here. Even with my bias aside, I feel like we both brought some solid analysis to back our points up to the table without disrespecting MOISES COSTA, by the way, and his skills. But we just like the underdog here, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Indeed.
And again, just like this one, Gabe Green, underdog. Mike likes Gabe Green. I like CAMILO, but again, like the other one, I admit there's bias in my pick, and I definitely do not feel like you should be betting my side of the equation. I think we agree that it is Dogger Pass from a betting perspective for Green CAMILO.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Even though we both have our frustrations, I do believe we both picked Jared Gordon. You might not have been as bullish as me on it, but we both landed on Gordon over MOISES, correct?
Did I pick Gordon? I thought I picked MOISES.
No, you picked MOISES. That's right.
Yeah, come on now. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do?
We went head to head on that one, folks. Okay, that's right. That's right. We both picked Del Valle over Matthews. That was pretty consensus slam dunk there. I know you said Lisboa was live, but we both picked Santos, correct?
Yeah, both picked Santos.
We both picked Santos. We both picked Gomes, that's for sure. You picked Park. I'm leaning toward Hernandez, but I didn't settle on a pick for this one yet, folks. I still want to do more tape on that one.
What a fucking cheap way out.
I know. I had to do it at least one of them. I had to do that at least one of the cards, right? Yeah. It's okay. I talk too damn much anyways. And we're both taking the big favorite in TECIA Pennington over Pinheiro. I think no questions there. Perhaps maybe a little round 3 that could hit big. If it does, you guys better remember us come next week or the week after. But that does it for UFC Vegas 106. Mike, anything you want to say before we get out of here, man? Please.
No, man. I think we're good. Like I said, You guys want to come to the site, madlabmma.com, check me out over there with boxing and MMA, DFS, wagering. We also are going to be launching a YouTube channel for boxing alone, only boxing, which is going to be fun and a good time. We all have a good time doing that. And other than that, no, man, I'm just looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to kind of buckling this down, getting it a little bit more cohesive,
Yes,
getting our pattern going, and hopefully 2 weeks from now we're off and running.
Yeah, we'll be getting this tighter, and hopefully we'll be growing with you guys. I know I love my new co-host, so hopefully we're just going to be building the rapport from all ends and building a rapport, more importantly, with you guys, man. This is your guys' show too, so don't forget that. Hit us up at Dan Tom MMA, at MadLab MMA, Dogger Pass Podcast. 5-star ratings and reviews. If you want to add to that, that's fine. And we will see you guys for the next slate of UFC fights.